Next, we have public comments, if we want to close the next first speaker for city council resolution. Public comment. Good, all right. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the meeting.
Sure, I just have, one correction on the motion to adopt the zoning hearing officer. I voted in favor of that, but in the minutes it's reported that I voted no on that. I don't know if there's something else. I was the one to vote. In discussion, the motion to adopt the language for the zoning hearing officer. Those are just-
Ron moved, I seconded, and it was kind of crazy, but you know, with the chief. Without that, you know, was approved.
Okay.
Yes.
Who was the first one?
You know. Yeah, second,
Second.
Great. Alright, thank you, then we will probably second, any discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
You're opposing nay. Thank you, motion carried. And we're next, we're gonna run way to completion.
Yes. Very excited.
You guys, thank you. Forgot my back, but it's there. So. For tonight, necessary guys, back to etc. A question is fairly popular, if when it will be finished, I'm going to propose a runway completion with you. Those predicated on how tonight goes, I know some of the broken record. Tonight was going to be a little bit more straightforward, but on Friday we received a memo regarding the last charter commission's suggested changes, not all making it onto the ballot, but then becoming represented in the current charter, which means we were looking at sections that were unsanctioned. So we need to discuss as a group what we do with that. I'm going to have Ken really have that in a minute. Charter review discussion, obviously we're going to revisit the work Ken did on the Inspector General language for you to provide feedback on his research regarding what other counties have done or cities have done around accountability for project completion. The third one was on hearing officer. We chose a more prescriptive language, but referenced mirroring the appointment process that Ken can explain is accounted for. So that's what we're going to do there. And then this last one, in fact, will end up going away. If you remember last time we stayed late talking about whether we should return account, we should turn account regarding Councilman Carlson's motion. Keeping it very simple, or understanding that there's no desire for us to return and that we can proceed. How that works protocol wise, we'll find out behind the scenes. So that's sort of a non-agenda issue, but we don't remember that just now. So that's what we're up to tonight. Let's go to the runway and I can ask you guys to think about this. Next conversation could shape this. So we're here on July 28th. I'm going to propose this again. It's just me thinking out loud about the work to come. So we complete our actual conversations around the charter itself here. And the reason you'll see the big X there, and it doesn't mean we need to do that. There's some work that's needed to actually draft a final report and work with everyone in this room to concur that it's what we want to send forward. So in lieu of that, my suggestion again, let me know what you think, would be to give us a respite for this meeting. I'll be working with Ken in the proposition. There's more than just putting the amendments down. I'd like to really cover our process, our approach, what worked, what maybe didn't work as well. A package that would be valuable to the administration, to the council, and to the future CRCs of the world. But then come back in person for a final in-person meeting on the 25th, by which point you would have all then sent something to review. So we can then collectively discuss it, get feedback, make sure you feel inclusive into that process. There's a little bit of time then to revise whatever you indicated you'd like to see revised. A virtual meeting on the 11th to finalize with a final submission deadline on the 17th. Again, very collaborative. These are just arrows, but it would be, check your email more frequently, see what's sent out. I'll give you a process for submitting your comments. I've explained all that ad nauseum so everyone would understand it. My only concern is if we bleed into here and we're still talking about some of these topics, there just might be a schedule constraint that would mean that it might be difficult to make it all it should be. I'll just be honest. That's gonna be, you know, a little bit of effort, and I know my standards for you, all of you are too, but we really high. I want to be a really polished, impressive product that really represents all the hard work we've done and tells our story around this, which is maybe second to the actual amendments, but it's equally important in some ways too.
When are we allowed to come in? When will I?
Yeah, well, I'm throwing this out for the group. The reality is at some point we're out of time. And the only concern, I wouldn't really maybe care about that too much. Other than the fact that that report is not a small effort, and I think we need time. I know I do, I think Ken will too, to pull it together. So I'm gonna stop.
Can we have, sorry, I was just gonna ask, can we have some, I've got a question as to whether we need to or want to have narrative around the recommended changes. I mean, I don't think we did that last time. If we do, I don't recall. And it creates a bit of a commentary record around the changes, which I feel like they maybe should speak for themselves. So at least for me, I'm not assuming that we need a narrative document in addition to the changes.
Ron, thanks for that. I was thinking more a narrative around, you know, what we learned from the process, Ron, not so much the final recommendations. Even in the beginning, when we had some back and forth around decisions regarding public streaming, decisions regarding other things, even attendance requirements, right? You know, we revisited majority vote, what that really meant. I think we certainly learned that some things worked. I think SharePoint works. So I think what I was getting at, Ron, is just more context around the process and other things that might be a benefit to a future CRC as they go down this road. Not necessarily explaining our recommendations as much as telling the story of the charter, of the CRC, and you know how we did what we did and what we learned from the process. If you disagree, it becomes simple, really.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Rob. I feel like you could have discussions with council members on the process after the recommendations go in, and we all collectively can. We certainly had a shared experience. I'm not sure. I just think it's going to be a lot of time, and I'm not sure the value. We all have a different perspective on what worked and what didn't. And I think we're going to get into, if we try to do that as a group and vote on something that's process oriented at this stage, I just feel like it could detract away from the substance of the comments, which are important. So certainly the lessons learned from you that you would like to communicate to the city council for future, that's your business to do that. And I think we all have the ability to do that. My instinct just is, it's not a good idea. Not that you wouldn't do a good job, Rob, but it's not a commentary on you. It's just I don't think we should try to write a document on our experience during this. I think we should just let the changes speak for themselves.
What does everyone else think? I don't really have a horse in the race. I typically think of ways to go above and beyond, but maybe that's the negative. Bill.
Well, first priority is the language that we're reflecting the changes, right? That's the most important thing. I do think it makes sense to at least have some explanation on the process we went through. I'm not talking about some of the same issues that you and Ron were just talking about. What I'm talking about is, a compilation. We discussed doing this. I thought we were all in agreement to just reflect the time and effort put in, the number of speakers we had, and just a document. I think Kathleen, in fact, spoke about it. And it just showed the effort and time put in. I think the number of speakers is important. They were things like that. We had a lot of input from not just the collective wisdom of this group, from others. But Ron, I do agree, we don't need to justify. I concur, and I didn't think Rob was even suggesting a justification of why we came down with the UCRC. But again, that already is reflected in our audios. Anyone, if they want to, can go back and listen to the debate. So I think a bit of a narrative on, the things we did and how we got where we were is appropriate. I agree, Ron. I don't think it's appropriate to spend a lot of time justifying it.
Bill, are you
what?
talking about like a few paragraphs? The committee was comprised of 9 members, one appointed by each council person, 2 appointed by the mayor. We met 17 times, that kind of thing. Or, I mean, I think what
And
Rob
I
was
also
talking
think
about.
I agree with what Billy just said, Ron. I think having them say we had experts come in, you feel like you can tap into resources to get additional education to go through the process.
But there's a difference between, a couple paragraph preamble, and I think what Rob was suggesting is something that would take a month to draft and a lot of time, which I took to mean details about, went into a level of detail of what we discussed and how we discussed it and what we did procedurally. And he mentioned what worked and didn't work, commentary on that. So I think the part of what you're suggesting, if I understand it correctly, which is sort of a few paragraph preamble of how many meetings we had, how many speakers we had, who they were, who was on the committee, that kind of thing. Certainly that's just contextual. But beyond that, I still think it's not a good idea to get into narrative on, again, what worked and what didn't. And I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking when I proposed it last time when we discussed was, 2 or 3 paragraphs. It sort of did what Billy just outlined.
Guys online, we're gonna give some folks in the room a chance to jump in here. I know you can't probably see them as easily. Bobby and Stephen, just thoughts on what the report might contain or not. And Bobby.
I guess we're trying to figure out what our straight interpretation of what you said is, but what I interpret that narrative to be was kind of just a restatement of the record, kind of in black and white outside of what we discussed in the charter. So similar to what Ron said, we met this many times, it was composed of these people. We discussed the rules for this and that, we agreed on this and that rule in our discussion. Like Bill said, we had this speaker talk about this speaker talk about. So, I mean, it just provides context is what I was imagining you said, because we're also including these other non-charter recommendations in there, and that also provides additional context. So I thought of this all as just framing.
Agreed.
Yes, and this could be scoped up or down, right? So we talked about listing the speakers. It could also be all the action items that came out of our group to others, whether it was council or the mayor. Just a chronicling of the important facts behind our work. Stephen.
I think we should just attach all the minutes for every.
What's that?
I think we should attach the minutes for every meeting and perhaps a chart that explains what was talked about at each meeting, so we can get back to it.
That's a good idea. And I was also thinking about hyperlinking the resources. They're all out there now. Right. And again, I guess in my mind, and I'm not really tied to it either way. It's up to this group, what maybe council wants, but if our revisions go through 12 years from now, someone starts this process, I could have used certainly more information about how to do this better right out of the gates. So I'm thinking of it. It doesn't mean it has to be in this report. It could be a separate thing. But in my mind, I feel like we've learned a lot about process, and I'm a process guy. So I want it to work better next time for the city. Alan.
My question would be included in this any mention of really what we talked about, that the questions that were given to us by the city council were not specific enough to be helpful for us to determine what the problem is that.
I would leave it alone.
Okay.
Leave it, but ahead of
Just saying, all in here.
No, it's in the minutes, it said we can look at the audience. No, they want to drop it, we drop it.
Maybe first, before I do a proposal, that's maybe something else now, well, this is helpful for me. Any other input before I suggest something to move us forward? And then we can talk about the schedule, which may in fact change depending on that. Any other input, comments?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to ask Rob is I would suggest anything that is a narrative or a report be a separate document than the actual charter, and that we vote on the two separately.
I agree like that too. I was going to suggest that, so that's one thing. The other was if I could take an opportunity to interpret what I heard can be very precise with an outline to maybe share with this group and get your feedback, is that okay?
Yes,
So I go down the path we're supporting. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. That being the case, this may be less than a month's work, to use Ron's word, not mine. But this might be the way we get there, depending on really how today goes. If we finish today, honestly, I don't know that we need the next meeting to cross the finish line. If we don't, we will. Which has just been the way it's been. So maybe you need that open ended. But it still helps us to see some time is going to be needed. And granted, if we're just packaging amendments, we can knock that out in no time at all. And maybe that's it. So maybe it simplifies it, but we'll see where we are. Does that work?
One comment, Rob.
Yeah.
The meetings will have to be here in person. The whole group cannot do it virtual.
Okay, thank you.
why,
Sunshine law requires that you have a physical forum in place.
I will be in Africa September 7th through 21st, so.
Either we have a forum.
Oh,
Okay,
okay,
but August 11th will be.
I'm here, yeah, until September 7th. I
Oh,
mean, if I had to do it, I'll do it virtual, virtual, I'll do it, why not? Let's go. I mean,
fine, go.
yeah,
Plus,
let's say, let's see. Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful for me, and hopefully for you too. Let's see where we end up.
Is September 11th a Friday?
If it is, I screwed up. Sorry.
Thanks for finish. Sure.
I meant it.
Wrong Friday.
I meant it to be the second Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh, you have time to fix that. I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to hand the floor to Ken. But all of you have printouts and the email only came through. I didn't even know until probably Ken today, Friday afternoon. Around the fact that 5 changes did not make it onto the ballot or reflected in the version of the charter we reviewed. And we just needed to, we really just need to decide what we do with this now that we know. And Ken, if you want me to pull up the memo, I can or not, it's up to you. Can you pull up the charter? Yes, yeah, I can.
And for those of you online, hopefully, you can get this out of my email. What I did was provide printed copies of what I emailed out earlier today.
So Ken, did you say you emailed it today?
Yes, it was in
Uh,
the email.
In the city email? Okay. If you could put it up on the screen, that would be great.
If you want to see it.
I have to forget.
I'll let you scroll on this, Ken, you want to be on the first blue?
Let me give you, the first one is in 602.
You get there.
Let me walk you through just the basics of what happened, according to the city attorney's office.
Okay.
The 2018 proposed amendments to the charter that went on the ballot in 2019. The city wrapped them all into one ordinance, and all of them are in the ordinance text. The city then attached an exhibit which had each of the ballot questions. 5 of the items that are in the text of the ordinance did not make it into the ballot questions.
Didn't make it in there wrong. Someone fumbled or they voted not to.
No, there was clearly drafting.
Oh,
So were these date wise, were these from the prior charter review or were these from the ones that city council unilaterally decided to put into it?
This is from charter review. Right, this is the last time they were all packaged together as one set. They're all here, so the reason why these ended up in the charter is when the Unicode company that handles the online charter received the ordinance. They simply tracked what was in the ordinance. They didn't track what were in the ballot questions. So the items that, and this, the person who found all this out, who triggered it is Bob.
How about this?
What Bobby had asked about was the implementing ordinance for the initiative and referendum piece. When I tracked that there was not an initiative and referendum ordinance, I apparently prompted for review of the prior ordinance, and it turns out that section which prompted another ordinance was never put on the ballot. Well, that's one of the 5. So
what does it mean? What we do then?
what I'm gonna do is just walk you through that basically you reviewed a charter that has 5 sections that were not accurate. So I'm gonna walk
And
you
these are
through.
the five, and we gotta decide are they accurate or not accurate, do we want any changes to these?
It's simply, I'm presenting them to you so you know what the actual language of the charter currently is. You can
So-
decide nothing about it, or you can decide you want to propose what the prior charter review board did, or do something else. And
I mean,
So Ken,
sure that you
Ken-
have the full information that we received Friday at the end of the day.
Ken, I just want to make sure I understand correct. So,
Ron, 1 second, we've got two before you. Alan, and then I think Stephen.
Does this mean that if we should do nothing, there are things that are in city charter?
What the city attorney is planning to do at this point is to have unique code updated to reflect, to remove, basically the edits I've made, that I'll walk you through. Whether or not city council can decide to go back to the promoters on these amendments if they wish. Or you can propose them if you wish, or they can leave them as they are.
So to leave them as they are, I think what we're saying is they become part of our recommendations. Meaning that they look like what the former CRC recommended, it didn't get there. If you decide.
Right, if you took an affirmative action to say, go past what the prior charter review board, then we would include these in your proposal. If you take no action on them, they simply default back to what they were in 2018.
And the red lines reflect what they did or what's actually in.
What I did is, and the blue are these changes from today. The yellow, the highlights that were already in there are the changes you proposed. So
this takes
that's
us
the
back.
differentiation.
Okay, this takes us back a version.
Correct. This takes us back to the 2018 charter. In certain sections, just these 5 sections that didn't make it on the ballot.
Stephen, you got a question, then Ron, you guys after that, Stephen?
Are any of the changes in blue that were not? They did not go to the referendum? Are any of them being altered by any of the recommendations you asked you to look at?
None of them covered changes you made. Well, none of the edited, the assumed changes covered things that you changed. So, but since you haven't seen this language yet, I don't know if you have it.
So is there any reason why we're not addressing this under new business rather than earlier in the agenda? Okay.
Only because I didn't think anyone would concentrate in this at the end. Because it's that important, right? I mean, it's a pretty big announcement, so I thought it would be better, we can get into the substance, wait, go on. Yeah, but I wanted to at least brief you on concept of it.
Okay.
Ron, go ahead.
yeah, thank you. And sorry for speaking over folks earlier. Ken, just a couple of questions to make sure I understand correctly. If I understand correctly, the charter document that the commission here has been working off of was incorrect in that it included language or revisions that were never effectuated into law.
Correct.
Okay. And those things that were included, if I understood correctly, were things that the prior Charter Review Commission recommended, but they did not end up ultimately on the ballot before the voters.
Correct. Let me add in the piece that they were recommended to city council. City council passed them in an ordinance, but the ordinance that was passed was defective as to the ballot question portion.
And so that explains why they didn't get on the ballot.
Correct. Right, the ordinance text includes all the provisions we've talked about today. But the ballot questions, they broke down basically each change that was proposed into a separate ballot question. They didn't do one overall question. And these particular items did not get picked up by the questions that they put on the ballot.
And when did someone identify that? Like back then, no one identified that the ballot language didn't capture the same thing as the ordinance, or is this a recent discovery?
According to the city attorney, they just recently discovered this.
So we've got to deal with it, so let's just get on how to though.
I mean, we've been waiting on these 2 big issues for a while.
We can do these first.
Should we just continue?
The only reason we're bringing this up is to make sure you're reviewing the actual chart. So to make sure that you knew
We're gonna have
in there in case you wanted to make changes since you've gone through the entire chart.
Yeah.
But you don't have to take any action if you don't want to.
You could just say that everything you said that you already follow is okay as part of your recommendations. That's the fastest path. Because you did talk about the sections. You didn't realize they should have been there, but you did as if they were what you were looking at, and we made decisions based on those. That would be the simplest way. You certainly spent the time on the content. So that would be the simplest. So we can come back to this. We can go to the other ones. I just wanted to tee it up because it was a bit of a surprise on that.
Well, what do you all think? I mean. We worked pretty hard on a lot of the stuff. This isn't our fault at all, obviously. I think we've made good recommendations and we should just move forward and. The city can deal with this on the back end.
Let me just ask, so the language on the screen that references the mayoral election of 1979, that was not in what we saw.
Correct. What you saw is what is now stricken out.
Yeah, and so Garrett, part of the issue, your what you said makes absolute sense, but there's a caveat to it is some things weren't in what we saw. So there's new language like the sentence on the screen that we didn't know existed. And I think at some stage in our review, we probably do need to look at these because otherwise we're going to miss things that do exist that we didn't know exist, like this language that's on the screen.
All right.
We did go through all the sections of the charter and we talked about all of these sections. Seemed like we were okay with the language that was in there when we talked about it. There were some points of discussion, like the salary. We talked about the salary for quite a while, but we ended up taking no action on that. There was the issue of residency, which we talked about for a little while, but we took no action on that. So what I see in the sections here, it appears that we've kind of discussed the meat of a lot of them, and we were okay with the way they were. So I would personally be in favor with like repeat the same recommendations that came from the prior charter review, just.
That's what I think we did over.
Five,
Oh, this is, to me, it's
you say five or
Five
six?
Five sections.
a lot.
Rebecca?
I would just like to get one point of clarification, looking at community code, and I don't know if it's been updated. I don't know, so my question to you, just to make sure that I'm understanding is, we see the terms of all offices underlined. Is that what was supposed to go under the ballot, the strike through and underline, or is?
This is now the reverse. This is putting
Okay,
it
so
back.
it's reversed.
Right, this is putting it back.
So.
If you give me 1 second, if you look at the exhibit, that's what was supposed to go on the back.
This is what was supposed to go about, perfect, that was my question, thank you.
I think Bobby was suggesting that we maybe, and Bobby, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, that maybe we just readopt what the prior charter review did if we agree with them. And if that, Bobby, is what you were suggesting, I would be comfortable with that.
That was really well.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, so I guess we have to do a decision. You can either see if your group supports that, or we go one by one to maybe still end up there or not, but each of these gets some time. It's really this group's decision. If maybe someone wants to make a motion, that might be the fastest way. You see how we feel about this, but I don't want to short shrift this either. We think we can spend time. Yeah.
What was the charter as a read before the last charter review, and what was supposed to change right here on this section? Just so I understand. Oh,
The best way to look at it is if you look at exhibit A of the city attorney's memo.
okay.
You see each of these sections, this is what was what should have been proposed to the voters as the changes.
Okay.
None of these were included in the ballot questions, so none of these changes were actually made.
If you read the changes, I don't think they're gonna bother you. I think you can look at anything. I don't think it's gonna take us a whole lot of time to go through this.
What version did we look at? Are these
You looked at those being included in the chart.
got it?
because the community code folks assume those have been passed.
So you using this as an.
Yeah, I think they're really just clarifying statements. I mean, I read through them this afternoon. I didn't think they were sort of contentious and based on the discussions that we've had, but everybody should be comfortable with that.
The key from my perspective is making sure, since we were alerted, you looked at an inaccurate version of the charter, we let you know what the accurate version is as of this moment in time. That, no commentary as to the, whether these are good or bad ideas, it's just what happens.
Can you confirm what actually was a substantive change versus a clarification? And that one, and also, were any of these since amended?
To my knowledge, no, they were since amended because the subsequent amendments dealt with those sections. As to whether it is substantive, I think that can look at older. Whether or not you believe having a majority of fewer than 4 votes of council is a majority of the council and salaries. The one that is offered is 605. The vote on the oath.
Yeah.
The reason the vote is offered is the residency requirement was voted on by the voters in 2024 to remove that. But it was previously voted by the voters. So the prior charter review board took it out of the oath, but didn't take the requirement to be a resident out of the charter. That was in the section 601. So since then, 601 was amended to remove the residency requirement, but now the oath is returned. So we have an awkward situation where there's not a requirement, but there's.
If someone can administer the oath, they don't have to be a resident of the city. Is that right?
No,
It's just saying.
it's what you're saying when you're saying.
Right. This now says you have to take a note that you're a resident of the city.
Even though it's not a
And
requirement.
so it's not a requirement because we removed that requirement. By something. So this is what happens when you have a time warp.
So here's, I'm going to, Bobby not made a motion, so I can't second it, but if Bobby were to make a motion. I have.
If you make a
Well, you made the motion.
Well, I don't know what he's doing.
Especially if they take the reason for all of it.
Alright, so
I like to entertain a motion.
there are a lot of words here. And I certainly don't wanna rush anyone. I haven't read these words. And you cannot say that none of them are substantive because they added in, zoning and the comprehensive plan, 2 initiative and referendums, that's substantive. There is nothing to me that is remotely controversial. All of them are things that we thought were already in there and had no problem with. And I am completely comfortable because I have read them and feel that they were they are what we looked at and assumed were there. I have read them, none of them trouble me. They weren't any of the ones that passed that I was like, oh, I would support that. To me, although I cannot say they're substantive, none of them are earth shattering. I think the biggest change is when they're voting on salaries was the majority of no fewer than 4 votes, which is a majority of city council, but if you only had, 5 people, you know what I mean? Like, none of these are going to change anything that we thought we were doing. And so I am 100% comfortable making a motion that we add these to what we were.
Make them yellow, like source.
That we
Flip them around.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Could be on the ballot to city.
What about the clerk issue though, right? We voted to have a clerk that said.
This doesn't change that, this changes the oath.
Just the oath.
So, they took it out because not all officers are required to be a resident. So if we don't change that one, you really are putting people in a position,
Which is making it
because
consistent
now
with
people are
the
required to be a resident, but they
Right.
have to swear that they live. So that one actually probably has to
It
go,
really didn't make.
even if you're not comfortable with any of the others, but.
So right now, the players is the
You made a
question.
motion.
Second,
I'll second.
What was the motion?
Who's the?
My motion is to take the changes to the charter that were recommended by the last charter review, and that by error were not presented to the voters, and recommend to city council that they put them to the voters this time.
Second.
Okay, so moved and properly seconded, discussion,
And the versions, the charter we looked at was the updated version that
It
the
assumed
city
all of
of
it.
the city, the these.
Yes.
Okay, I'm-
right,
Oh, question.
all in favor say aye,
Aye.
any opposed say nay. All right, motion carries.
That's if you have to move it to the.
Maybe you guys need to listen about this. Actually,
Maybe it's it's today, actually. Something just came from headquarters.
A 20-page brief.
Right.
Okay, just, that was a precipice, got it.
we got through that.
So, general review, we talked about the three, I'm going to. Basically just take us through this, of course, Ken did the work. And then we can decide what we do with it, I'm gonna start with. What Ken found out, we're gonna do this a little bit reverse order around whether or not. It's the notion that the charter has language enforcing, and reinforcing the notion of timely completion of projects. This was the item that Ashley brought back, her colleague talked to her about this, and I think as a group, we thought it was a good topic, so. The takeaway for Ken was to say, has anyone else actually chartered this before as opposed to the other things? Again, projects, so I'm gonna take us there now, and let Ken describe this, bear with me, because I've got screen real estate challenges here. That's the IG.
The next time, maybe more screens.
That's
Right.
That's that. That's that, I think it's out. So we bring this back up. And the floor, oh, we can.
The short answer is that I could not find any other city and even charters that have this kind of regulation. The closest we could come to was a Jacksonville ordinance that dealt with progress and closure on capital improvement projects, which had set dates on progress reports, how things would be put back as far as having this concept. To try and speed it along, in case you wanted to have some kind of language like this, we worked up a proposal based on the Jacksonville ordinance, where you could have a progress report being placed on a consent agenda. That would be done on a certain date. We just picked out on 4/1, that was what had been done in Jacksonville. I think that fits the budget timeframe that you're typically looking at these things. But this would be the first. We are not aware of any other charters in the state that have this kind of requirement.
And I think the reason why I think that this needs to be in the charter, like I was saying before, it takes the pressure off of council members on whether or not they ask about certain projects over others. Some may be forgotten. When I met with Councilwoman Diane, she said there's projects that have been on over 4 years. So it is an issue. And they hear the issue, people do come and complain to them about it, we don't hear it. So I think it's something that if it's gonna be I don't think any project should be forgotten, but at least I think there should be something in the charter that allows people to be updated, or something triggers for there to be an update on every project that is either behind or is on track, and it's on track. She shared this document with me on the last DRA meeting. I guess they started doing this housing initiative progress dashboard, and with it, they have to put the project name, the budget, the CAC recommendation, CRA approval date, phase, status, and then there's like a description on if there's a delay and what the delay is. And it's a publicly accessible document. And she said that they have to update the date this monthly, maybe for the city, they would only need to update it quarterly. So it's not something that it needs to be updated every month, but at least people would know what's going on. This is great, this is awesome, once a year, this is something that's happening. But in addition to that, I think, and maybe that's just something the city can work on doing internally, and if they knew people wanted to see it, this would be nice too. But this is a step forward that maybe actually more attainable. They don't want to do an update report.
Thank you, actually,
Unless, I'm interested if Steve and Rebecca had a reason why this would be logistically problematic. To me, I don't find that offensive at all. I think reporting, I mean, we're all accustomed to just advising and updating. That's simply what this is. Stephen, any downside to something like this? Simply updating once a year seems to be a proper thing to do.
Ken, can I ask a question?
I asked Steve Rebecca a question. I was waiting.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm assuming that June first is driven by whatever the internal budget schedule is. I mean, is that where that, like the June first, did that come from the language that?
Right,
Came out of the okay, so I mean, that's where, I think it just needs to be the time that's constructive to the interim budget process.
Is that appropriate, or do you suggest a difference? Is that what you know, Steve?
Whatever the fund balance, is. So. I would need to look and see what that
you
is.
can find that.
I mean, yeah,
Sure.
it should be a time where there's something they can do about it, and also that's in between when budget goes to them. So I think the budget goes to them around that time. So that's what I'm saying. It seems like it should be 6 months after that, not right. Or after they get the budget, because they're gonna get status updates on projects anyway, because they're budget, so they dig into everything then, so. That would be my only comment. That would be. To think about.
So I took a note of, you have to confirm the dates. Any other logistical issues per Bill's question?
I don't think that I'd be the person with the expertise to say whether or not that this was a problem.
Was there a general feeling of liking this language and feeling it's important? I think innocuous was your word, Bill. I would agree.
Ron had a question.
I'm sorry, Ron, my bad. Go ahead. Okay, Ron.
Yeah, thanks. Couple questions. Can the last phrase, including those funded in whole or in part by grants that have not been completed, what's the need for that phrase? Isn't the prior language kind of self-executing without it, or why did you include that other language?
It was simply because of the model that was presented at Jacksonville.
Do you think it would accomplish, from your opinion, the same thing without that language?
It comes down to whether or not they're classified as projects. If there's any reason why they wouldn't be if they're considered part of a grant. Given it was a particular item that city looked at, I simply would. I don't think there's a problem taking it out. It's just a clarification of the idea of what projects are. It's more detailed.
Got it. Thank you. To my peers, my suggestion would be to take it out just because it sort of begs the question of why are you calling out grant funded as opposed to maybe other things. And in the preceding sentence seems to be it doesn't exclude it. It doesn't exclude grants on its own language.
I'm fine with that.
Do you know, I think, would this capture projects that are funded by the CRA as opposed to just the city? And if so, is the disposition of those projects within the control of the city?
My take on this, and obviously it's up to the city attorney to later interpret it, but it would not include other agency projects.
Okay, thank you. It might make sense to, Ken and I would defer to you on drafting just to make sure that that's clear.
Well, the charter in and of itself does not regulate the community redevelopment areas. So therefore, the project of the city under the charter would not pull that in. To be like if it was an airport authority project or any other kind of project. It's a separate government entity.
I have two hands,
Never mind.
Bobby and then Allison.
Never mind.
The question for Stephen, did they, they're popular today. On the CIP, did they not already have, listed out by the projects in the budget, the delays or issues for completion date, is that not included at this point?
Well, I'm not, an expert in everything in the CIP. I think that in terms of, I think what you're asking is the required elements of the CIP. And, the required elements of the CIP are not necessarily what is presented every year. There's a lot additional that goes into that, that speaks more or less to what's going on, that might vary from year to year in terms of, and I can't confirm that like the delays, like projects that have been delayed are shown in the way that it seems to me by issues that have arisen, like I don't believe that like project status and I think it's just the funding schedules in the 5 years, what money is going to the project. And then there's a lot wrapped up in that, but in terms of what's required in the CIP,
They might not have. Maybe there have been delays that may not necessarily be included, it's not required to be, but could be commented on if it's relevant for the budget.
be out there at least.
But on there, maybe they show one time or something with the status. So if something's not on track, I don't know if they should be reported on it. I don't know about for on every project, if on track, then no.
I had a comment to Bobby's point about, and like what Councilwoman Trump told you. A project's been delayed by 4 years, it says a progress report identifying any delays, et cetera. Does this go as far as you had hoped?
It's saying.
Like,
what
hey,
the action
like as in,
is.
hey, here's the report, it's delayed 4 years.
Right.
I mean, is this, if this was in the charter, would this give council's legislative subpoena power or investigative authority? Could it take, now, could it take that further?
Yeah, that does, this is just a force mechanism, bring it out, put
But
it in the
because it's in
sunshine.
a charter, that doesn't change any sort of investigation.
This is just a siren. Yeah.
Yeah,
In other words,
it's gonna work, though, it's just a report. I mean, it's better than nothing, certainly, I've been with you on this, but. You know, we're saying, hey, this is delayed. I
Right.
don't know if
Well, what do you mean by delay? Because typically when they report when a delay is reported in the like a CIP, it's a delay, meaning the funding for construction was budgeted in fiscal year 2026. We didn't spend it, and so it's been moved to fiscal year 2027. That's a delay or a deferral. But like a delay could mean they told me they were gonna start next week and they haven't started, which isn't the same thing, really isn't necessarily appropriate for a budget document. So there's a project management and there's budgeting.
Right.
So like
could that be clarified, maybe?
Yes.
So, what it is, because I know this space, you're talking budget. But this really gets to is the concept of baseline. So you have a schedule. You can re-baseline it, which means everyone accepts things have changed. Right, and then there's no delays anymore, and then you get delays against that. So that's one comment for the group's consideration. The other is, when I've ever done this, and again, I want to inject myself here. An element that would bring more rigor to this would be an explanation of how those delays or issues will be resolved and by when.
Yes,
All this is saying is things are broken, it's not saying how we correct course.
Right.
So
yeah,
I throw that out for you guys to consider.
Yeah,
In my world, if I'm really turning the screws on an important project, that would be included in your consideration.
yes, and thank you for the suggestion, but all I have, I told you, I would have the mayor, whoever needs to come up and report on why something's delayed, so I'm ready to go whatever. Height we need to go to figure out how to get these projects done. If it gets approved, the money gets approved for something, I feel like there should have already been reports, like, you know, like, because. When not what Nia says, when they're up there on the dais, somebody will, well, what's the update on this and what's the update on that? They legitimately do not know. They should be able to go to something and say, oh, there's a tree here and they haven't gotten it removed yet. Like, there should be some type of detailed reason as to why X amount of money has not been used and we voted for that and used for that. So I think it makes sense.
So is the advantage here that at least this would be giving members of the city council the information about what is happening to a project? And the question would be, do they have other mechanisms available to them to then seek answers to why?
You know, like something about an additional hearing regarding a specific project, but
Very.
So my support of this is to provide the information to the public and to city council, in one format where they don't have to ask about every project. You convinced me that was a wealthy thing. I am not going to support providing, micromanaging of projects any more than I have this information, I want information about why this was delayed. They have that ability now. I am not for providing city council the ability to get into the middle of the projects and make directions, because that is a wholesale turn the charter on its head. And I'm not gonna support that at this point, unless we're gonna change everything in the charter. So I will support this. I think that this is a great idea. If there's, some minor changes that people who deal with this area more than I do want to do, I certainly open to that, but I'm not open to a wholesale.
This is a step in the right direction.
This is giving information that allows them to then get information.
Yeah, and a progress report is something written or somebody has to come in. What is that?
It says it's on city council agenda, which would be consent agenda, which would be a written document.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we call it staff reports, so I don't know if that's what the city calls them. Would be that.
It's different. This is, the city council consent agenda is consent agenda.
Yeah.
It doesn't require us to be there and speak.
Right.
If someone from city council had a question, they now have this data in front of them. Whether it's Nate Allen, doesn't matter who, if the project is supporting project, their constituents, so they're complaining about that project. They have the ability to call someone in from the city anyway, and I do not think it should be the mayor. But someone from the city to come in and explain, okay, we've been waiting for this part for, maybe 2
They
years.
do that every week.
Okay,
but sometimes they don't know.
Can at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a comment too.
They explain to me like this project is delayed, I can't imagine the city.
There's just there's a difference between a regular reporting requirement, there's an expectation that the amount of information will be available, and an impromptu request.
I meant the request would come after I got my report, there's this report, then Bill's would fit in order, again, whoever's sitting on that city council, not me, would be asking, hey, I'd like to follow up the next meeting, can you bring someone here to explain why this project that I'm looking at in my report is late? Then if that ability is here, this works, this gives the city council the ammunition they need to call people in and get an explanation. Actually, I think this is the right first step.
Right, without adding a.
Yeah, I don't think you have to.
Well, it's not, I don't think
You want to give Laura a chance?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, from a drafting perspective, Ken did a great job at just a couple of things. In the third line where it says any delays or other issues, I would replace the word any with material. We're drafting law here, so we want to be precise, and I think any is casting a too broad net there. And then similarly in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line toward the end where it says comma and all previously funded projects, I think I would strike all and have something that indicates that we're talking about things that are ongoing or pending. Because the way the language is drafted, it could mean they've got a report on things that are completed too. So those would be a couple of changes I would suggest. The other thing is I wonder about the June 1 date and if we need to put an exact date or just say at least once each fiscal year or something like that.
I would maybe offer that we would defer to city council and get like back to the. Something else too that I just want to circle back on, I think that CRA funded projects do actually funnel through the city budget, so I would want to clarify that this doesn't apply to them before we
Can you verify that?
And for the record, I think it should. I think it should, assuming council wants that, I think it should be read because.
I think we should ask for that for the CRA, if it's, if it's in the city budget, it's in the city budget. But if it's a CRA project and it's not funded otherwise to the city, it's just, it's city council, it's not city council. It is a separate legal person. They could take each city council member off it and have different people sitting on it. It's a separate legal thing. And it's not governed by the charter. So if it flows to the city budget, fine, and then this would capture it anyway, but if not, so I don't think we need to add anything.
Is it possible it's funded by both?
If it's funded by both, then it's covered by this.
If there's any city funding that would be covered by this, the point about the CRA is we can't affect them either way, when it comes to the charter.
And city council can answer questions about CRA only funded projects when they're sitting as the CRA.
What I
Charter doesn't govern that.
No, I agree, and I thank you for clarifying that, for projects where the city is executing them on behalf of the CRA, I would like to explicitly make clear that we expect those to be.
I don't say what I would want.
I just thought the comment was made earlier that they may not be satisfied, just.
Ken's gonna run his ground for us, let us know.
I like any delay.
Again.
Any delay, I like any delay
Yeah.
today. I think you worded that just fine, because material, what's material, example material.
So if it's 1 day late, you want an explanation?
It's gonna come June 1st, the report comes on June 1st, right? So,
Or unless we just let the council decide it.
whatever date.
Yeah. Yeah, my question actually was, I think what you were saying was, if a project is delayed by a single day, you want that to be reported with an explanation?
No, I didn't say that,
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood.
No, I said any delay. That's what I said,
I think you also said, what does material mean? Because I
Yes.
would think of that meaning the same thing.
right? And I feel like that can be interpreted all these different ways, well, that's not really material, that's not material, anything, now, if it's 1 day late. I guess what they would do, everything I feel like would be on this matrix, if it's 1 day late, it'll say 1 day late. It doesn't mean that somebody has to come up and do a whole spiel about it, but you're gonna list every project. If there's any delayed project, it's gonna show that the due date was, January 2nd, and right now it's June, right now it's June whatever, so if it's, what is it, May 31st, if it's June 1st, and it's delayed, it's gonna show up delayed, it's not gonna put any red flags on it, but it is delayed, so, but I'm not
Well,
saying.
yeah,
Hold it.
the language doesn't say whether it's currently delayed. It seems to indicate it's in the past tense, any delays or issues that have arisen. So I read that to mean legally that we're talking about over the life of the project. So if it's on June 1 and something was supposed to be delivered on April 1 and was delivered on April 2, it's going to have to be included in the report.
Well,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
it says current status, this is a progress report identifying the current status. Any delays or issues, so every project is getting reported on.
Right. It's a list of what needs to be in the report, and the current status is one thing. And
Yeah.
any delays or issues that have risen is a second thing. So the current status is not part of the delays. It's a separate item.
But Ron, if you added current after the word any, I think it accomplishes what
Any
you're,
current
it satisfies your concern. Current delay. So not a
Well-
past, current delay.
That's not my concern was things that are material, not necessarily whether it's current, but I think I was just responding to Ashley's comment that it is qualified by it being a current status report, which I don't think it is qualified in that way. My concern, Bill, is that again, we're putting into the charter a legal requirement that a report be drafted. And when Bill, I don't want to speak for you, but you know this, when you see something like any delays or issues, that's a pretty comprehensive requirement. And I think it could be burdensome.
That's a job.
Steve, so what is it? how do you define a material delay? What is the threshold for what's material?
You would have to, someone would have to define, otherwise it get turned different.
Well, there's sort of an implied relativity there to a time frame, and if this is once a year, then it's like a delay since the last time this report was given, that's an entire year. So what is, I guess, what is the, I don't need to beat the horse, but like, I feel like this is the whole point of what you're trying to do, so.
Yeah, because I just feel like it's maybe it can be misinterpreted if you just say any, but this says all the projects. All the current status, any delays or issues that have arisen and anticipated completion date for each capital improvement funded. Capital improvement project funded in the current blah, blah, blah. It's saying all of them are gonna be reported on anyway. So in that column under status, it's going to say. If it gets done before, I guess, this project, then it's completed, but you know, if it had a delay. You're saying they shouldn't have to, you shouldn't have to,
Can I,
yeah, that's, I feel like
can I make a
that's.
suggestion, because I think you brought up a good point. A delay can be meaningless or meaningful. I think what we're wanting here is something around any delays or issues. That will cause the project completion date to shift, because you may be delayed midstream and fix it and never change the completion date for a project. We're talking about completion, I think that's what you care about, you're not caring about interim milestones, you're not caring about. The delivery of supplies was 3 days late, otherwise that gets on a report, and becomes untenable. I think you're talking about, you said you'd be done October 1st. Is that in jeopardy, and if so, why? Is that, I'm just throwing that out for the group, because that's typically at a more executive level than how you make a sausage.
And. I don't know, if the bridge person that's supposed to be bringing Evor, if he's consistently late on a bunch of projects, wouldn't they wanna know that? Cause they probably find somebody else.
They wouldn't, in other words, if I said, just as an example.
Right, I understand.
If someone's building a house for you and they say you're gonna move it October 1st.
Yeah,
The public should then, I think it's.
Right.
that's my point.
Right, but if you're moving into a house on October 1st. Do you care that the faucet was delivered late to the house if you're still gonna be able to move it on time? That's the kind of question we're asking. You may not, because it doesn't risk it, and you're like, that's fine when you get it, as long as I can move in. I think the public wants to see completed projects. Steve, actually, Alan and Steve. I'm trying to help, I'll shut that.
I only agree with what Stephen is saying, that we need to define what material means, because if the project was scheduled. You can complete it June 1st and it's June 15th, I don't think that's a material delay. And I don't think the object here would be to make the reporting burdensome. You know. That burdensome, I think. What we've kind of been agreeing on is that this is a really good first step. To at least giving the public and the city council an idea of. Status of a project and. Go from there.
I guess they could ask for something different, if it's not what they want to see.
So this is fine, I just, the only thing on here that I think is sort of missing is odd. Is the anticipated date of completion, because otherwise like.
Yeah, now they could need that.
And not start, like all of that's sort of meaningless. And I don't know if it should be us, it's up to us to define that, I think it needs to be up to. The people that are implementing the projects to say where they think it's gonna be done. And then hold themselves to that. If that makes sense. And if they're not ready to, then that's sort of the point, then there's too many unknowns of the project, they can't define a completion date. So, like, I think it should be self-defined and self-reported, I don't think that we should try to legislate that.
I think Nina said Vertex mentioned that there's no completion date on this, but there were some notes, I gotta watch the last meeting, I just got this, so I was like, well, I'll share it with.
So we have,
Because I do think that sometimes there are expectations set. In the public about how long things take and how long they might take, and unless. It's coming from the city or coming from. Whoever the CRA. That story's gonna be filled out.
What would we like Ken to do?
because we've got about 4 or 5 variables we talked about. Date, the words around material. The grant text at the end, there's like 4 or 5 refinements we discussed.
But there are refinements conceptually, we're, I think, all on board with a reporting requirement. of any kind, you're not there on reporting.
Well, I mean, for delay specifically, I think this whole thing is about us and transparency. And like, for instance, I've had a slide at my city park that hasn't been fixed in months and months and months. My pier's been out for 2 years. If they fix it tomorrow, it's not good enough for the public, like, oh, they fixed it finally after years. Why? What took so long? So I think keeping it as is a good move. I think that's the entire point of why, at least I was advocating, because myself wanted this in here.
So you support this as written?
So that's what I meant, conceptually, the concept up there of a reporting requirement, are you on board with it or not? Now I'm confused.
Y'all.
Yes, I'm on board
Work.
with it.
I like when you voted.
But I think some of the changes that were discussed, like fundamentally change what this is, yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess depending on how the vibe is, I'm good motion to accept it as is. Otherwise, there were changes we discussed around date, the last part around grants, some of Ron's comments, Stephen get.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think you guys, the only thing I think you changed. That city council picked the date.
We just talked about that along with other possible changes.
Okay.
So it's really not this group to decide if someone wants to make a motion to accept this as is or accept it with some revisions. I can walk through what was discussed and then maybe we can at least get to a decision on this and move on to the next thing. I think that's where some of
The only thing I thought was, I heard no one object to what Ron has suggested, eliminating the part about the grants. I'm agnostic.
So we're gonna be brave, slow, and throw out a motion to see how the group feels. That'll tell us where we're at. We might actually be on.
Shouldn't we just do hands on the specifics?
That's another way to do it. That's typically how I do it. Let's try and see if we can get there. So let me go through the things that we discussed. One is around, do we keep a date or let council decide? 2, remove the grant text at the end. 3, narrow any to material. 4, change previously funded to active because it's legal language and that technically means you might be presenting stuff from the past beyond what anyone cares about. Confirming that CRA is covered and then putting the word current before delays. So a lot of wordsmithing type tweaks to this that I guess we have to ask ourselves, is that gonna really change what the world does with this in a chart? I don't know, and it may not, so that's why I was thinking maybe a motion. Otherwise, we're gonna get a lot of, I mean, maybe someone could start the process, but I could do this too.
Can I move or I'm not allowed to move?
I think you can,
You can pass the.
You can pass the gavel to the vice chair.
I know.
this is the right chair down here, right?
Right.
You guys get that?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
This is
Okay, I like to, I move that we adopt the section 7.12 progress of city projects. As an amendment to the charter.
Any seconds?
The thing that Stephen said about June concerns me. Should we leave that part up to council?
I think so.
Agreed.
For an amended motion.
Yes, I move that we accept section 7. Yes,
I got a question for the group. I'm inclined to vote for this, but we talked about any current delays. Do we are we interested in past delays? I still can't get my head around. I don't care really what's happened in the past. If it's done, it's done. I don't know that they should need to keep reporting on past delays. Why would it be any current delays?
this is.
You got any hard with that?
I support it. It says current capital improvement, so is that, would that, so it doesn't fix that,
You just put current after the word any and before delays.
okay.
That's it.
Maybe someone can add those pieces to a revised motion, current and. I guess you can accept the language because we don't have it for.
Let me make a suggestion. You can make a motion. You can then do this off Robert's rules. We'll go with friendly amendments. You can propose friendly amendments. You can decide whether or not she accepts it and incorporates that into the motion.
Okay, I move that we approve section 7.12 progress. Progress of city projects as an amendment to the charter. And then I can make a friendly amendment about the date.
You can include that right now in your motion if you want.
Okay, with the amendment of the date being determined by the city council members.
Do we have a second?
And the word current, you want the word current?
and adding the word current.
Okay.
Before delay,
After any and before delay.
after any and before delays.
It's a motion.
Do we have a second?
Rebecca.
Yes.
second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I,
All opposed?
Sorry, I missed my shout.
I'm opposed.
But we're just Bobby opposed.
Not opposed.
So, unanimous?
Thinking.
Okay.
No, I think it was all that.
I don't know about those. Okay. I think
What was the vote, Rob? Sorry.
everyone were ayes, but I think you were wrong, correct?
is Kathleen?
Kathleen made us have to step away, she's on mute. So didn't get us vote.
People want to know why.
That's what I have to know.
No, I'm here.
Okay, Kathleen, you are and then on the motion for
Current.
I'm sorry, Ron.
They took a vote, and I think just to make sure I understood correctly, the motion that was voted on was a motion to approve the proposed section 7.12 with changes of removing the June 1 date and adding language to let city council set the date, with adding the word current in line 3 before the words any and delays. And I think there was one more amendment to it, Rob,
so far not.
or maybe not.
Earlier on, those were just those two were Ashley's motion.
Just those two.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I
and I
support
think, okay,
And say that again, Kathleen.
Kathleen supports that.
Supports it. So that's all ayes and one nay for Ron, correct? That's where we stood, that's where we landed. Think we're good? Everyone's going twice? Okay, good.
I think there was older project, the answer that what was the delay before and it's still not done? You're saying that whatever the project is still not done, so then it's.
Well, people wanna know why something took so long, I just think that's important, I mean, I'm happy with it, I think it's a step forward, sure, but.
And but there's nobody gonna ask and say, hey, who's our project man?
Okay,
That's first required, you know.
I'd like to move us to the next topic, which is Inspector General, which is quite a bit of
It's good.
content from Candy team and Bobby provided some context to us all. I am going to.
Yeah, I thought you did a great job.
You did great,
You got a comment, see what, food.
you're a pioneer.
I'm gonna let you kids and then you can finally make sure that anything you provide is beneficial. That's what you. Sure. Sorry, I did it. You know. Right, Ken, you're a popular guy tonight. Go ahead, it's our Jim.
Based on your discussion last time, a lot of this came from the Doral model, that was out there, most recently adopted, and something similar. As you can see, it adds on a new article. There didn't seem to be an actual fit in any of the current articles for this, since you wanted to have something that was not in the legislative, not in the executive part of the charter. So it's an additional Article 12 that is the charter. Establishes the office, gives the scope of the project's work here and the powers that are vested in it. Created a separate selection and retention committee, modeled on several other examples that were out there. The individuals that are listed is simply trying to find a cross section here that seemed to be fitting what you were describing. We have the mayor, the designee, the chair of city council, the designee, president of Hillsborough County Bar Association, the designee, president of the University of South Florida, the designee, state attorney, chief judge, and chair of the ethics commission, of course, or their designees. The idea was also to have the designees have prior experience in law, audit, accounting, or public administration to provide some background here as to what it is they would be then pointing a person to do. Should someone fail to decide they're not going to serve or fail to make it, the designee has an alternative mechanism with the mayor can make an appointment confirmed by the council. Obviously, you're asking outside parties to participate, whether or not they want to participate in any particular time, we'll leave it to that. Includes a time frame then on how this is supposed to act to make sure that it doesn't just sit There are certain things that each of them is supposed to take their various steps. And include them and update every 6 months with the inspector general, go over how they're doing and make recommendations. There's provisions on removal, on vacancy. And sets out that anything that's not covered here, I try to specify the things that came to mind that you typically do in an ordinance as opposed to putting in a charter. So it's, the idea here was to give enough guidance to make this a charter office that has some ability and powers while putting the rest of the details out to an ordinance that both the city council and the board have to deal with. You had mentioned the idea of making sure there was the option to go to a contract basis. So it has a provision that it doesn't have to be a full-time employee, that could be done otherwise. The rest is simply the implementation timeframe that gives them 6 months in order to get this moving after it's adopted by the voters and gives the ability to extend that. The goal here was to try to encapsulate everything you talked about last time. So please let me know if there's other pieces that you'd like to include, or this meets your expectations.
No, I promised you a chance to say anything in addition to that based on the funds that we should move into prevent.
Yeah, I put together a document, maybe some focus and time to read it. But I'm happy to dwell on this and make marks as needed. I have some recommendations for changes, so let's stay with this for now and then kind of cross the bridge when we.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I read what you wrote. Thank you.
Anyone volunteer to go ahead, or did you want this?
Yeah, okay, so Ken, I thought you did a great job. And Bobby, I really appreciate you bringing up the issue of the inspector general, because I think it hit on a lot of the overall things that we're trying to talk about. And it's really helpful for me to see it in writing. The way that it has ended up being put together, I have a lot of issues with, and I'll run through them quickly. You can hear me beat the dead horse on this, but what is created here is a super broad inspector general, and we hit on a bunch of different things an inspector general could do. Some of which we already have people do, some of which we thought may be better in a third party, and I say we, some of us, all of us. But they're can do investigations, audits, reviews. In addition to that, they also have the power of oversight of city matters, including contract programs, projects, and expenditures. So there's like 2 overall areas, and then there's kind of the third one, preventing fraud, waste, and mismanagement. So we start with like a super broad, really broad thing that this person is supposed to be doing. And so I'm gonna kind of break it down into where I have my concerns. One is, so you're kind of like reviewing agencies for waste, fraud, other areas of improvement. I think we can all agree that that's a super important thing to get done, but I've got 2 problems with it. One is even one person or even one agency can't do a good job doing a review of local agencies. I mean, we're looking at Durrell, which I don't know how many people they have, but we're talking, it's not even compared to sort of city. Also, most of the ones that have inspector generals, except I believe Jacksonville, and I could be wrong. I did a quick review, we're not strong mayor forms of government. And so you were actually having like this inspector general who was serving your board or your council, who is also trying to manage all these different areas. So it's a very different thing. You don't have someone who's already responsible for being the administrator and doing the administration. So back to my point about one person or one agency, you have enterprise funds, you have the normal departments, you have the legal department. One person, one agency isn't going to have expertise to go in and do a good job providing evaluations of all those different entities. Not to mention the fact that like transportation is different from planning and has different needs, and parks is completely different animal, and recommendations that somebody with expertise in an enterprise fund running like a business is not going to be the person that you're going to want to make your recommendation for parks. So that troubled me. Second, I think it should be the mayor who makes the choices of what agencies do the evaluations of the different departments, because they are the person who's going to be implementing them. And I think you've kind of turned everything on its head if you have a separate agency and a strong mayor form of government who's making all these recommendations, and you have a mayor who has not bought in on any of those. You're literally wasting all your taxpayer money. If the mayor doesn't buy in on who, she's the person who is responsible and elected by the citizens to be in charge of the agencies and how they are run. And if we're getting recommendations from somebody that she doesn't buy into, it's completely wasting everyone's time and money. Whereas if you have a mayor who gets to choose who's giving her those recommendations, which they generally do when they come in, and the mayor does, they're gonna buy into that. And so that's one problem with I have with how this is set up. I really, one of the things that really, I don't wanna say intrigued me, that's not the right word, but one of the things that really seemed important about this idea was when you're getting like complaints from HR and allegations of fraud, and then you're going to the people who are in charge of the people who are having the allegations of fraud. That has a lot of merit, and I, having worked in city government, and I'm not saying I'm talking about allegations of fraud, but when people have problems with HR and then you have to go to HR, I've seen that has not necessarily worked in a way that, has always seemed productive or fair. That being said, I feel like we're still ending up with a lot of conflict. So you have HR and you have the administrator in charge of this, and then you have this other entity and they give a report like who wins, right?
Well, I agree with and I appreciate everything you're saying. The only question I would have is, isn't that basically what happens with internal audits right now?
Well, the internal audit is
Like in practice.
under the mayor.
Yeah.
And they make those things, they're provided to city council will let them review them and ask questions, and they go to the mayor. Right?
And they never get implemented or anything.
And they get implemented and they don't, but it is from a person who has buy-in from the mayor. And so, that goes back to, and I don't think that the internal auditor, I think this is one of the things that Bobby said, doesn't do all the things that we were talking about. They're limited in scope and what they're doing. I'm not saying that they're doing a great job, but their job isn't to go in and do a complete, review of best practices. And, what are the best practices for our parks department, or what are the best practices for these enterprise funds that we have? They're looking to make sure everything's going, and they might have some suggestions, but it's not this full scale review. But at the same time, well, I think it's a great idea to have this full scale review, and I think Garrett was one of the ones who was really talking about that, even if he just did it for a couple of years, and I was like, yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. But if you have it from this entity that is not someone who chose it from the mayor, and I'm not just saying, oh, the mayor has to have the choice. The mayor is literally elected to be the person to be in charge. And so if she doesn't buy in on this third party, I'm kind of going back to my first point. So going back to, I do think that there's a gap somewhere in, I don't know if it's a gap in the charter or a gap in just like the world and how things work, but where you have complaints and where do they go? So is it enough to hire a full-time position for those times that we do have complaints and we don't have somewhere to go? Because right now they can go to city council. City council has the ability to bring up these issues. They do have their investigative authority. And it seems to me that they have the ability, city council has the ability now through their investigative powers and through their budget to contract with an entity who could be a third party person to review from their point of view, not necessarily the mayor, to look at some of these issues and see if there's fraud and to see if there's, I don't need to be picking on HR, right? Just kind of the one that sticks in my mind, but HR issues that are not being handled in a way that are fair and according to all of the handbooks and everything. They have the ability to contract at the beginning. It's one of the things that we talked about. Does city council, do we need like this third person to kind of like mediate, or does city council have the authority to do investigative powers? And they were like, yeah, but we don't have anything to do it. Well, they have the ability to contract with these third party people, and it seems to me that would be a better way to do it than creating a charter position that's like a full-time charter position, and then we could have it be with contracts. And then I did appreciate that I still have my first part of my problem with the entire them being able to review all the agencies. It doesn't seem like that's the best use to spend the money if you don't have the mayor or the administrative side buying it. They need to be spending that money, picking the people and having the people to review and make the suggestions.
Okay, I'm gonna go Alan first and then you, Bill. Go ahead, Alan.
When I think about the Inspector General, I frame the reference is the federal government, and I know that, you know, whether you're talking about the Department of Defense or any federal department, they have much more resources and expertise. But I'm not looking at this as an Inspector General that will necessarily provide prescriptions for solving problems. I look at it as some of something somewhat independent of the administration or the city council to look at issues and report findings to the public and to the city and to the mayor, and then the city and mayor, the city council and mayor could and the public could do what they will with it. But the idea is, again, almost a entity, a step back from under anyone's direct control, to at least look into issues of public concern.
And how? What are the issues of concern? Is that just issues of fraud? Is it just issues of malfeasance, or is it? I mean, this is super broad. And then once this person's in there, they are given charter authority to do everything in there, including oversight of city matters. And then we haven't even got to my second point, which is it is then implemented through an ordinance. And the ordinance gives them the power to talk about who they report to. And then so through ordinance and through legislative power, they can then have a report back to city council, which then is again doing that backward at the very end of the day flip of, you know, who has power over this person. And it does say that they're supposed to be independent, but we're supposed to be independent, right? We were created by ordinance, and we see what that ordinance did, and it wasn't a mean ordinance, or it wasn't a terrible ordinance. It just was a very prescriptive ordinance in what was supposed to be independent. And this broadly leaves to city council the ability to prescribe many things by ordinance, almost limitless.
Bill, you want to jump in here? You can go, so you go.
Rebecca, you always bring up the point. We used to have that. I had read this and I said,
Yeah, and I'm sorry that it came from like with all these listed things, but when I read it, I really did.
and it's a good thing that you brought that up. When I read it, I looked at the purpose. The office shall not exercise and I'm not sure this answers any of your concerns. This made you feel better. Can't exercise legislative, executive, or administrative powers. Is that okay? And then I asked, okay, what are its powers? Which refers to the committees. And it shall have the power to subpoena witnesses. And the difference here with the city council, remember the city council when it was, I think, had a limitation of legislative issues. But here it says you can subpoena witnesses, administer oaths, and require the production of records in order to conduct its investigation and audits. And shall then have, it doesn't say then, but it shall have the power to file ethics complaints, so that's to refer it out, refer matters to internal or external authorities and to publish independent public reports of its findings. So to me, when I read that, it gave me some comfort that really what they're doing is just bringing things to light at that point. They don't have punishment, you know, unless I might not pick this up elsewhere, but I didn't read it having any punishment authority, anything beyond. I never hear this is bad, but that doesn't fix any of your problems, I guess.
No, I do agree with that.
I kind of echo Rebecca's thoughts on this. I'm a little bit concerned about an unfunded mandate and what the budget impact would be on this. And honestly, I'm a bit of a smaller government check and balance. And, we see these kinds of offices that get weaponized for political purposes. We really don't have a fundamental problem at the city. We haven't in this area. But we've got financial audits that get done. We've got EOC type reviews of things. We've got a very active state attorney who does a great job in our community. Um, creating another person who could subpoena any of us at will um, doesn't sit comfortably with me. And the deployment of resources for something like this when the city's got a lot of needs, and if the property tax initiative passes in November, we're going to have even more fiscal needs that are unfunded. Doesn't seem responsible to me.
I guess this might be a question for Ken, because I know we looked at the internal audit role last time, I think the job description. Maybe you touched on this, and I missed it, is this, how does that role exist alongside this one, or does it come? Is there a savings there by having one person?
It carves it out to be something that we dealt with in the ordinance provision, because that is handled under the mayor right now. It did make sense to codify that process here, but it calls out that it needs to be dealt with in the ordinance.
The internal audit role, is that a charter position?
It's a charter called out thing to have, but it reports to the mayor, and how it is actually functioning and how this will function. Is something to be dealt with.
So they're separate with this language. Nothing in this language means that position will change.
Correct, there's no change.
I have a clarification.
But,
So
but go ahead. Sorry, Ashley.
the way things stand right now, if something goes fraud, sexual harassment, whatever, the way things are right now, the city attorney has to try to do the investigation. Is that what it is right now, or? How is that, what's the, if something happens within the city, with a city employee, and they go to HR? What happens right now?
As to staff process for HR.
Yeah, what happens?
That's beyond I typically handle, but right now under the charter, the executive part of the government deals with these issues. How they deal with it from a day-to-day aspect, summon HR to ask them.
And so what we're proposing is that it be charterized, so that way.
This would not remove anything that exists today.
Okay.
This creates a the idea of an inspector general is to a third party that has the ability to review both the executive and legislative parts of the government. That's the concept of an inspector general.
Okay.
But they don't have, as was noted, they don't have the power to override the mayor, they don't have the power to override the council, they're purely a reporting entity.
Right.
Can I say one more thing, and then I'll be really, maybe just one more at the end, like. The whole thing that I said at the beginning about, needing the administration's buy-in for the things that they are responsible on stands. The other part that really, really concerns me is you have really, really broad authority for this inspector general, oversight of city matters. Basically, oversight of everything. And yes, all they can do is write reports, I get it. But then they are then created by, well, they're not created by ordinance, they're created by charter, they have further regulation by ordinance, including the appointment, reappointment term functions, authority, powers, and reporting obligations. It's basically an arm of city council that has oversight. And for that to not be said to be turning our charter form on its head,
Can you just scroll?
To the mayor, that you can't do that.
Yeah,
Just
that can close to a C though, because C goes with you.
Or they're independent,
Oh,
except they're created by ordinance, and that's city council who creates their function
okay.
and authority
What
and
section?
powers and reporting obligations.
What letter is that?
Letter G.
G?
It's good idea.
So
I think that can close with some of the other.
Probably do a comment.
Yeah, I don't know if Bill was say something.
Oh, no, I was just reading that language, that's what's interesting.
The goal of that language was to give the ordinance the ability to further define how this would function. We could certainly narrow.
and
Any of that.
I have no complaint with anything that you did. I mean, it's very difficult.
Right, trying to fulfill what all of you were looking for.
And then to still somehow have it further defined, how you have it further defined other than ordinance. I don't have an answer to that, but at the same time. You're delegating to city council the authority for them to take this office and basically make it an arm of city council. And by you, I don't mean you, I just meant it.
I had quite a few edits to the proposal from Ken. Did anybody else have any edits to it?
I had some minor ones.
Do you guys want to? Yeah, of course. Okay.
City council arms, so when you're saying like they have to report to the city council and they have to like. They could hide something, is that the concern, because I feel like the mayor has a bunch of arms, why can't he have some arms?
They can have arms, but this is supposed to be independent,
Okay.
but yet it
Should be independent.
it's, the purpose of it is to be independent of both parties, but it is, so are we. And yet it's created by ordinance, which allows it, and not just allows, but says that it should create its authority, its powers, its reporting obligations, and its relationship to other oversight bodies.
Well, we should eliminate that.
Well, good.
Okay, so there's just a couple. A minor one, we can start with a little thing through the underhand toss, so. In section A, the last sentence. Promote the public trust and increase understanding of the operation of government. If we're all still in favor of having an inspector general and using this as the way we kind of shape what that looks like, this document we have in front of us. Are we able to change that language to promote public trust in the transparent and accountable operation of government instead? It's just like a language,
Say it again, Mike.
promote public trust in the transparent and accountable operation of government instead of the understanding of it. It's more of like a stylistic change. But I'm just going one by one through what I have.
Doesn't offend me.
Okay. The next thing that caught my eye was in an appointment, and thank you again for drafting this. It gives us something to work off, because I think last time we were just kind of whistling in the wind, like not really sure where we wanted to go with it. So it's so helpful to have something to actually talk about. So thank you for putting this together. I would strike. So I would reshape this as in a selection committee and strike retention. Because further on in the proposal, it has a 6-month periodic review. And my perspective is there would be a selection committee that makes an appointment, and then that position is filled for, I think it was a period of 4 years in here, but there's some definite period.
Wasn't in there.
Was it in there?
No, the term was left to the ordinance issue in G. That's a question there.
Okay, but then it's a question that I have too. But I think I would rather see the position be filled by the committee. The inspector general keeps that position without this recurring like 6-month review. There would just be a new selection based on the terms of that office.
So, Bob if the inspector general did something illegal or wrong, there's no way to remove them?
No, that there should be, the way that it's written down, there's not an ad hoc, I mean, the language we have now, there's no ad hoc removal procedure in it as it stands. It's just a 6-month periodic review essentially. I hear what you're saying.
Bobby, I thought the mayor, the city council could.
To get
Ron, there is removal, to get out.
Okay,
that in there.
Together, you need the mayor and you need the city council to agree and they could remove, so I mean, there is a check and balance.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah.
Ken, what was the purpose of the retention in that section?
They came from other charters where they sought to keep the group that selected them engaged with the office and give another reporting ability out to these folks that are involved with it.
And 6 months I thought was just a jump, can I jump in, Bobby? I thought 6 months was every 6 months is way too free. It's up to doing the job, if you're gonna have that, I thought.
Completely optional,
It is here.
something that is out there.
And Bobby, what was your concern with having that group do an evaluation?
It was the frequency. I felt the same that 6 months might be too burdensome to get a whole committee of these high ranking and important people together for. You know, we involve people here in the city, but it was mainly the frequency of the recurrence.
Thank you.
What did you think of the committee composed to make the appointment?
That's another point that I looked at,
I would suggest.
yeah, I wouldn't have the mayor or the chair of the city council on there. I would replace those with two individuals who are not elected office within the city of Tampa.
It doesn't trouble me that they're in there, Bobby, there's 7 here and I absolutely would have. You've got a nice list, but you got the state attorney. You've got the chief judge of the 13th, these are all great, people to have here, but you should also have the public defender. If you're gonna have a state attorney, you absolutely should have the public defender.
Do we,
You have anybody, it's an even number, I know, but that's not so weird here. And it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't offend me that they got designated, that's 3 voices in a room full of 8 people. And these are all 8 personalities, and you're not gonna have any, shrinking bottles there.
I think the underlying theme for some of the changes I've had is I would try to completely remove any reference to mayor or city council as much as possible, other than for if this position has to be terminated for some offense or such. But I would strike the inspector general shall be appointed by the mayor and confirmed by majority vote of the council. I would strike that and just say the selection committee appoints. I would get city council and mayor out of everything. Should be a completely independent body.
Right, Rebecca.
Okay, so this is my local government nerd question, and not about my overarching thoughts on this. I agree that if you're going to have the state attorney, you should have the public defender. That being said, under what authority, does the charter have to make these people serve on this committee?
that was my question.
There's no authority to make them do it. But there's a provision if they decline to do it, how it would be done.
So if they decline to do it, I'm sorry, I missed it.
If they decline to do it, then it goes to mayoral appointment and confirmation by city council.
Okay.
The same as other positions.
I should have known.
Always have that.
What if they say no?
What's your next one, Bobby?
So yeah, so far there, semantic change, like a language flourish change in section A, I would strike appointed by the mayor, confirmed by city council. In section C, I just have the position appointed by the selection committee. I would strike the mayor and the chair of the council from the selection committee and add the public defender. And maybe a representative from FDLE, if there's a regional director, maybe police chiefs association, other body or individual that represents law enforcement. I would extend the period if the committee fails to make a nomination within 30 days. It's a little bit of a tight turnaround, especially if you're getting these busy people together to look at something. I would extend that to 60 days. That's just arbitrary. We can discuss that if that's something people would like to discuss. What I don't have very clear is if they fail to appoint, how do we get them back or get somebody in to do it? see. And then there's the question, which I think all of your commentary was very incisive, and I appreciate that you thought so much about this, but. There's also the question of the interplay between the internal auditor and the inspector general's positions, which I think is something that you touched on. And that's what my proposal tried to address, because I was also thinking about the same kind of issue as you were, but maybe came from a different perspective. And I kind of see this on a spectrum, so. On one end of permanence, you have the one-off, you know, we don't really change anything, the city council can just contract with somebody if they need to, that's, you know, on the far left of the permanent spectrum. And then all the way on the other end is my proposal, it's like we restructure everything and make it a permanent position with an office, et cetera, et cetera. Which obviously I'm in favor of, because I propose it, but maybe. You know, other people have different opinions about somewhere in between, because I think those are our two kind of bookends of. Are thinking about this right now, and I think that's really an unanswered question to identify, the points that you made.
Can we pause, maybe Garrett, share your thoughts, and Steve, I wanna make sure everyone's voices are heard here.
I was just thinking, I think the bookend is a little bit further shifted since we've already voted to establish office of inspector general. So it's just a matter of what it all comprises of. And why these specific? Were these specific?
It was simply modeling on other ones that are out there that tried to have an outside group as opposed to it purely being the mayor and the city council.
Yeah.
And that was the concept here, right? It kept the current appointment process involved, the mayor is releasing a nomination from this, that came out of this committee, and city council can confirm that person, otherwise the process starts. As the fail safe goes back, they advertise and goes from there, but it gives everyone a piece of a bias here as far as the appointment of.
And on the ordinance language. What you're basically saying is any amendments to this or changes on the ordinance, which.
No, actually, anything that is not defined here that needs further definition is done by ordinance. The ordinance couldn't override the charter language. They're stuck with this is the basis, and then anything, the base level, and then each piece would go above that by ordinance.
I somewhat agree with Bobby keeping it entirely independent. This board was appointed by the city council, the mayor, and we sort of see how that's gone politically. Where we're caught in the middle. I wouldn't want to establish something like this and have it be subject to the same issues. So I think I agree with Bobby. If we could further remove the politics out of it.
There's no black people on it, I just want to say that.
What?
Black people, representation of black people.
I wouldn't be comfortable on the group like that.
There are black,
That's not gonna be black, you mean, I'm not following.
currently right now, everybody,
You have to know who.
You have to know who was in
Right.
it.
Individuals that are currently in those positions.
right,
You know, you're suggesting you have someone, a representative. Designated, well, hold on for a minute, finish. I mean, I don't know what the terms are, I'm saying, I guess you now. What would you be suggesting? Let me ask that.
I don't know what, but I just know it would not, you would not have a black person, you would not be a part of that committee, and to say, you know, well, that's okay, you know, I can't get behind that either. But the mayor may designate a person of color, or the city council may
Right.
designate a person of color.
But
Now, will they do that?
Good point. You can eliminate the mayoral seat, Bobby, and the city council seat, and sub in there. Got something put in here, President of the University of South Florida, good President of the University of Tampa. You wanted to.
I feel like.
Huh?
What if we-
I'm not dealing with the
what's the
black-
question here?
Oh, no, I'm not doing, that's a tougher one to deal with, because you're gonna designate some. Which, I mean, are you suggesting you designate a specific seat and someone of color?
No.
What would you, Allison, go ahead, speak your
Go
piece.
ahead, go ahead.
Okay.
No, but it should be at least if you're trying to be fair to.
We are absolutely trying to be fair.
A atmosphere that's fair.
We all agree.
And now we're creating a leadership that is in Tampa that is predominantly white. And
Give me an
so
idea of
we
another-
are black people within the city right now already scared to come forward. They would definitely not with that.
Give me an idea of what to put up there. I mean, I understand your concern, we all do. Give me an idea.
Well, you have presidents of organizations.
I got you one. George Edson Bar Association, it is an African American,
Now we're.
group. The Florida, Hillsborough County Bar, eliminate the president of Hillsborough County Bar, put the GBA president, it is always an African American. Seriously.
And in addition to that, if you're gonna remove number two, adding a member of the public. I don't know, qualification, but that might be interesting too, to be more representative. Yeah, that's a big question, right?
That's a really big one.
Yeah, who picks that person?
And you've got to cross check, guys, I mean, if you add the GBA one, you've got to.
Public
Ethics, the chair of the Ethics Commission, chief of the 13th Circuit, I mean, that rotates.
Pretty broad.
It is.
Bill, can we just pause a second, Stephen, just your input to the conversation, because I want to make sure everyone was heard.
I wanted to keep.
Okay.
Okay, I make one other point. Yep. And again, forgive me, but my model is that the IG system in the federal government was created in the 1970s. And the two core duties are charged with investigating fraud, waste, abuse, and illegal acts inside federal agencies. And power to conduct independent audits and report egregious findings directly to both agency heads, which is the administration, and Congress. And I think that in some shape or form removes the embedded biases from both the legislative and the executive branch. Because both branches and the public are going to be getting the same information. It frees both the administration and the legislative branch from accusations of favoritism. And so, I mean, the federal system is not something that carries a hammer that mandates certain reforms, it just reports it. And I think that if there are issues that get out into the public by this way, by an IG that has no perceptible, bias, is really what the point of all of this is.
Great. If I could, I think we had, reading the room, maybe strike 1 and 2, replace 1 and 2 with different roles. Are we all on board with that?
Different what?
Different.
How about you just do the University of Tampa president, strike number 4 instead of. 3, change it to the president of the George Edson Bar Association. Is for her designation.
A support change to 3. I think I'm hearing public defender should be on board, so I'm thinking 1, if we focus on 1 and 2, do we have agreement on striking 1 and 2 if we replace with someone else?
Would a union representative be allowed?
How strict are we gonna be, no offense, should contributions of conversation from that? I don't want to limit anything, but
Right, this group is allowed to ask anybody questions, so.
this group can ask me all this question.
Allison, what'd you say?
Let's all,
Thank you.
And again, college educated, third generation. However, you had another college person, you are now putting together a particular elitist board. So would you potentially could consider putting a union person, someone who is boots on the ground, blue collar, so you have a diverse view on whoever that board was investigating.
That understanding, but as long as they should prior experience in law, audit, accounting, or both, I mean.
Each union has their own auditing, they have to do the books, they have to do negotiating, they have lawyers or, just.
Which union?
So
I'm afraid.
I'm
That was.
Latino community.
ATU. There's more than one.
There's more than one.
Right. So I think we can agree on your recommendation, Bill, but George Edgecombe as a replacement.
Yeah.
I think we all agree on it, or most of us.
I wouldn't
Figure
talk
out-
about what we agree on or what we don't agree on yet, but you're welcome to continue to discuss that.
All right, I'm just trying to figure out how we advance, if we're discussing changes and then we don't finalize any changes.
You can read a room, Bobby, most everyone you're shaking their head.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
We should agree on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Something like a better motion, but not yet, keep going.
Yeah.
All right, so then we're back to 1 and 2. I don't like the mayor or the chair on there. Does anybody support the chair and the mayor being on this selection committee?
I do. And I'll tell you why, Bobby, because fundamentally, this is the business of the city, and the person should discharge their duties independent of influence. But I don't think that the chair of council who is elected and the mayor who is elected and are both answerable to the people should be left out of the process of who is selected to be someone who has ultimately duties of the city of Tampa to discharge.
I agree with Ron.
Will there be under such?
I agree with that.
As part of the. Okay.
Kathleen, Ron and Alex support Ron's position on that, or whatever. Any other comments to that effect? Or is anyone else generally think separate completely?
I don't support separating completely. You're looking to have someone selected who, God willing, not just knows about law, understands government. And you're having a lot of people who know nothing about government making that decision, and I don't think that that's a good choice.
For me, it's either or. I think Bobby, you suggested to remove even the appointment, right? Initially, I think you said that.
Yeah, I would strike that too. Inspector General shall be appointed by the mayor and confirmed by a majority of city council. I would strike all that. And the Inspector General shall be appointed by the selection committee.
For me, I think it's either or. I think if the mayor and the chair are not on there themselves or are allowed to pick a designate, I think at least they should be confirmed here. Or either way.
But I mean, just think about the implication of that. We are the citizens of the city of Tampa, and we're going to allow 4 individuals potentially who are not answerable to the citizens of the city of Tampa to appoint that person. And there is a check and a balance on the mayoral appointment and the confirmation by vote of city council. And all of those people are answerable to the citizens of the city of Tampa.
The mayor and the city council, right, this is drafted. They only pick from the person that's recommended by that committee. So the committee.
Picks, and then.
But they don't have a choice to go elsewhere. If they say no to that one, then the committee sends them another one.
Right.
I mean, so, you know, Bobby, that's gives you a little comfort, right?
Well, that's another, I mean, I guess that's an operational question. I mean, who's receiving applications for this job? Is it the city HR department? Is there some preliminary sorting procedure or does the selection committee get the applications?
Ken, I would think that would be the selection committee that they publish and new applications come in under.
It leaves it to the city to advertise and handle.
Yeah, I don't want to have to be advertising, but.
Right, and the committee won't have the resources unless you require them to be able to go through an advertising process, so.
Right, but the applications come in.
Right, yeah,
And
they would be advertised, they would get all the applications.
The committee gets applications, you get 50. The committee's gotta go through them. Committee's gonna decide who they're gonna interview, they're gonna vote, they're gonna argue, they're gonna debate, and they're gonna make a recommendation. And the mayor and the city council either approve it or they don't, and if they don't, then it goes back to the committee. So the committee's got the final, you know, I say the final, they're the ones sending the names up.
Let's go to Stephen and then.
Yeah, there's already a kind of defined process that the clerk facilitates for these types of positions. So I think it would just follow that process to be advertised like an appointment. Go based on offers.
Yeah, that's how I mentioned it would work. The HR department would post the position, the applications would come in, they would receive a batch of applications that would go to the selection committee.
I'd be curious to know what you think, Bobby,
Yeah,
real quick, Ron, if this selection committee was 9 members and it was appointed by council and the mayor, but we removed the confirmation. It would almost be like we would be operating in the same capacity and putting things directly on the ballot. That may remove some political issues that were brought up. Because to me, I'm like, President of the US Senate, you know, they're gonna be interested in specific things, I think, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I just wanted to point out, Garrett, too, that I think the way this reads now, it could be an employee who goes through the hiring process. It could be a consultant that's engaged through contract. And in answer to your specific question, the people on this list are intended to be people who generally have high integrity. And really their job is to just hire and oversee an inspector general. It shouldn't be politicized. It should be someone who has high integrity.
Agree with that.
And that's why I don't support having a mayor or the chair of a city council on here. The people that we have on a selection committee should all be highly qualified. With high integrity, as you mentioned, and it shouldn't be politicized. Anytime you have an elected position making a decision about who's gonna oversee the operation of their branch of the government, you're injecting at least some degree of politics into it. That's why I'm so hard line on having this completely independent with no influence and no involvement with the mayor or chair of the council at all. They shouldn't get to pick, in my view, the hardline view, who's gonna be watching them. They should be completely independent in every regard. And I wait toward it now with mayor and chair and the mayor appoints, it's not. In my opinion. But I take a hard line on this one.
Well, let's see where we.
But Bobby, I also feel strongly that you have
So, I mean.
to build.
Good, Ron.
You froze.
I was just going to say, I feel strongly that there needs to be some. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I also feel strongly that there needs to be some accountability to the voters of the city of Tampa, and those are the only 2 appointees that serve that constituency. And I feel like if you have 7, they're 2 of 7 votes. So we're also presuming that they would be in lockstep or coordinating something, which if our own personal experiences or anything, they're probably going to bring differing views to the discussion. So I think it just would be a mistake not to have anyone who's accountable to the voters of the city of Tampa participating in that decision.
You feel differently, and all I'm gonna say is that we can talk about this issue for a long, long time, but I think we need a straw vote on this issue as to where people stand on whether 2 things, right? The committee, do we have the mayor or his or her designee and the chair? All right, we're gonna get back to, I think everyone's agreed on Chiba and add the public defender, but can I just put it to a straw vote? Who thinks the mayor and the chair of city council should be on this selection committee?
So we've got Rebecca, Bill, Alan, Ron, Kathleen can't see you. Yes or no? You may have lost her.
She said yes, please.
She's, you may not be able to realize.
4-4, so, okay, what's you consider is that?
Kathleen, are you, if you can hear us, are you in favor of the mayor and the chair being on the committee?
Or their designees,
Yes.
we may be more comfortable if it was their designees.
Is that a yes, Ron?
Yes, I'm for it, you guys. I'm sorry, I'm dealing with
Sorry,
a
you're just the
health
deciding
situation
vote
up here.
on
I
this
know,
one.
yeah. No, I'm for it, totally for it.
Each other out, right?
So Kathleen,
You still have the appointment.
so we have 5 people who are for keeping them on the committee, correct? Is that what I heard? Okay, here's your scroll poll.
Correct.
Correct.
I look at it all together, and then we're all in agreement on the president, instead of the president of the Hillsborough County Bar, adding chief up. And then I think we were all comfortable with adding the public defender.
To the eight.
Yeah,
Yeah, 8, and then the question is, do we want to add, Allison had mentioned someone from a union or something like that, I think that's really tight, so I'm including pick a union.
Because you have two new,
If you could show
additions.
to the West Central Labor Council, which is basically the umbrella of all or most local unions.
I don't have a particular, what you.
So far,
We're making a lot of headway with what we're doing right here.
right, so we have 2 new additions to the selection committee, but that's as far as we've gotten so far, correct?
Correct.
And at least straw polling it, you had some other changes here. Language, but in terms of substance, even like content.
Sure.
That's where we stand at the moment, so based on this last straw poll. The mayor and the chair do not. Where are we on the next item?
That the inspector general is appointed by the mayor, and confirmed by a majority of
Okay.
council on nomination from the selection committee. That's confusing to me. I think the selection committee should just pick who they want. It's their job.
are there any other positions like that we have, where like committees select and then just it? I'm just saying like.
Well, now we did,
Is this drafted in such a way, can the mayor and the city council must select from the recommendation from this committee?
Yes. They either select the nominee or it bounces back and they have to re-advertise and go through the process. I think the general theme I picked up from other inspector generals was to have buy-in across the government at the beginning of the process. That was,
Buy into who it is and then.
that was the trend I saw across the board.
the record.
I was just gonna say, one of my fundamental problems with this whole thing is you don't have any buy-in and you have someone spending all their time doing this that no one has any respect for and they're not going to listen to, and we're really just wasting money. I still don't think it's accomplished to address my concerns, but at a minimum, I feel that they need to be appointed and confirmed.
It was strong.
Yeah, it's just straw vote, how many are in favor of keeping the current language? With the mayor appointing and council confirming? Show of hands in the room. 2 people online. One, Kathleen, are you in favor?
Yeah, I'm supportive of that.
That's 3, and Ron, I believe you are, but I don't want to speak to you.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little hesitant, Rob, because I got a lot of other concerns, but if you're saying if we do this, do I prefer to have it the way it's drafted as opposed to having it just be the 7 or so individuals select without the mayor and council's involvement? The answer would be yes, I prefer it as drafted as opposed to that change.
Ellen? You go along, so does that get us to 5? I think it's the same.
It's fine.
For on that, so that would mean keeping the current
As of.
as is process, yeah, okay. That's appointment, so. Proclamation. We have 3 we've agreed to. Actually, and keep them in there on the panel. On selection, okay, so 4 things actually. Mayor and chair on the selection committee. Mayor and council involved in nomination and confirmation. And then adding 2 members to the selection committee, that's where we stand so far. Next issue.
There's a periodic review.
Okay.
Periodic review.
We talked about maybe extending from 6 to at least 12 by virtue of that being fairly quick. I think there's consensus on that. Show of hands that we would increase the time period from 6 to 12. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everyone in the room agrees 12 months makes more sense than 6. Ron and Kathleen, do you agree? For review timeframe, we're just getting these in pieces, Ron, to get.
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I mean,
Kathleen?
again, I'm with Ron and Rebecca. I don't know where Rebecca's on this proposal, but yes, for this conversation, yes, I'm for that.
Okay, Ron?
And the question is 6 months to how long?
Currently, it's written as 6-month reviews, and the group seems to be moving up to 12 to 6 months is fairly quick and comes quickly. Might be a burden, and it's
Just eliminating it?
no, moving from 6 months to 12 months for
12
review.
months. Okay, sure.
Okay, we can get there anyway. So, month reviews. Okay, next one. Next one.
For removal, it seems to be a one-way process. The inspector general may be removed by the mayor, but only with the approval of the council, et cetera. I think that should also go in the reverse direction. The council could vote to remove with concurrence of the mayor. Because right now it's going to the mayor, the council votes, but which has to be the council can recommend and then the mayor.
Okay. Easy. Is everyone in the room support that here? Yes.
Yes.
Ron and Kathleen, just so we hear your voices, do you support bi-directional initiation for removal, council to mayor, mayor to council? Not just mayor to council, which is currently written, correct?
Sure.
Kathleen, okay. Ron,
I'm not sure, Rob, so I'm gonna be a no.
okay. We still got almost everyone, so that adds to the list of yeses. Removal initiation was a little words, but you get the idea. Okay, Bobby, your role, so next one.
Vacancy, inspector general may be filled temporarily by the mayor with a similarly qualified individual for a period of 90 days. This goes back to my hard line. You already know where I'm gonna stand on that one, so I have no point belaboring it.
Wait, explain that now, Bobby, is that similarly qualified person must come from a list presented by the committee?
No, this would be purely a mayoral choice. The idea was to have.
If someone got an accident and.
Right, someone hit,
Got sick or had a heart attack.
the idea of someone hit by a bus, there's someone to fill the role on a temporary basis.
I'm fine having no one fill in both.
Yeah, I think you just go back to the drawing board and say, no. Yeah, for you.
I'll go back to the drawing board, keep it
Yeah,
vacant.
we could be in the committee.
Do you want to put a timetable on that? For
Yeah,
the
committee.
for so that it's not a year and a half with no one.
Hey, you gotta do it fast.
Yeah.
I mean, we extend you think 90 days or
Sorry.
90?
So suggestion is 90 days, remove language back to the mayor appoints temporary role. And this is a committee, does its standard process.
The 90
It's drafted in a 90-day window, okay. Everyone here in the room support that? Yes. Ron and Kathleen, did you hear that? And you're okay with it?
You
Yes.
just keep going from my perspective, Rob. I'm not really okay, so I don't like the path we're going down, but go ahead.
So, bear with me, I'm just copying this stuff. 90 day. Yeah. Sorry about the next.
Age, employment status, we talked about this before, we're drafting a position in an office right now. But I think it remains to be decided the permanence of how that position is filled. Sounds like what we have so far, there's a placeholder for an inspector general, but the way the language is written, inspector general need not be a full-time city employee and may be retained individually or through a firm. I would. I go, you know, on the far end of the spectrum, I would like to see the inspector general as a full-time employee, period. Open to discussion on.
See,
I sort of see this as being somewhat. Duplicative isn't the right word, because the independence gives it a lot more function. But from a real standpoint, duplicative of the internal audit department, which is section 501 of the charter. That department has 4 or 5 positions plus the director of the department. So that is that function, that department, and the role would be purpose under what we'd be creating with the OIG.
you're saying move the auditor and is there organizations under the.
I agree with that.
And, okay, and as a full-time, with the IG being a full-time employee, of course.
So make the internal audit director DOIG and repurpose the staff to perform those functions, have it be reporting and appointed based upon how it's been drafted as far as the amendments.
Right.
I would not support taking away the mayor's ability to have audits for department. She needs that.
I agree.
He or she, whoever gets elected, needs that. And while I feel that this could fill an alternative role to take that, to take those positions and the ability to have audits of the departments that you are obligated to, you know, elected to run is not okay.
I agree, and I think that you can still retain that position within the organization. But as far as it being a required charter position, honestly, to the point you made earlier, there's not really a point if they're required to. I should be created already. This actually puts that function through a lens that is more independent, which I think is why it belongs in the charter, and the position referring to the mayor doesn't necessarily need to be required.
Sure, Rebecca, that was the one that I struggled with. Because I agree, right now the internal auditor kind of works as like a managerial tool, and I think there's benefit to that, if you describe. The mayor should know what's going on in the city and things need to be changed so that it can work better. Where I think my perspective is different is. To Stephen's point, if we kind of excised that from the executive branch, like we just an auditor department, shift it over so it's separate, but still give the mayor the power to request that, you know, certain audits be performed. I think you could still have that kind of managerial for it function. Because the mayor can ask for these things. It's kind of how it works right now. So the internal auditor kind of does their own process, they have their criteria, they rank order their risk stratification for different departments, etc. They present a plan, mayor said, yeah, sure, or no. The mayor may recommend something, so everything like would be the same, the only difference would be the mayor can't force it, they can just say, would you consider auditing this department as well?
Just to throw something out there, for you guys, what about the option of the IG being a formal reviewer who can comment on the outputs from the auditor? So if I'm just trying to play both sides here, so if the audit function, I mean, it would give you an opportunity to chime in on not removing the mayor's, to Rebecca's point, authority around leveraging that function for the management of the business. I'm just throwing out things for you to think about, not advocating.
That makes some sense.
Again, just trying to, if there's a middle
I
ground,
think
that's all.
we're just trying to balance. Like the cost effectiveness that Ron mentioned, which I definitely agree with, and then just like duplicativeness of government, which we all I think agree is an issue to some extent, so. Where we split it.
I mean, putting it under the IG though would of course basically make everyone reporting. In that function today, it all basically don't report there or to the council, it all goes through that line. And they're giving them a whole organization. So, again, I don't understand analysis, but on this,
Full-time employees, Steve, are you suggesting that the IG be a part of a city department?
There's currently a department that it's a charter department. And the role, the job description and nature of the work. Overlaps. So, I mean, the broad oversight that we established based upon the drafted language. So my suggestion is to take that required role and dissolve that department as a charter department and use the resources to create the OIG, but make sure that the work that was being performed is done by this OIG, which I think it already sort of does. It's being
right.
So I thought a lot about what you said, that the mayor can then go ahead and it doesn't have to be in charter, but you can give her own audit. Which answers part of my question, but it's still, people will give the audit. So that doesn't resolve my question. So what Rob said actually kind of took care of that, which is, because I think the mayor has to be able to say, I want my department audited, and it can't be someone being like, I'm busy, I'm like, investigating fraud over here, so maybe next year. That's just not feasible. When you are running a city of this size, she's got to be able to have that power, and she shouldn't have to do it and then have it over here. But if there is going to be the IG, which at this point I still do not support, but if there is going to be this IG person, then having them be someone who reviews the audits makes sense.
I'd like the idea of keeping it entirely separate and having the IG just have a independent contractor's task with the city, not be an employee at all.
I support that as well.
Yeah, for
That kind of goes back to the original question, we kind of moved downstream from that. So maybe let's do that, and then we can go back to this, you're advocating for a full-time employee position. Contractor position, more Jared on line.
it doesn't. What I mean by a contractor is sort of avoiding some of those overlap issues, but I don't mean they wouldn't literally work full time. I know there's like employment on all that. If they're an employee, don't they have to be within a specific department? So therefore, they would have to be somewhere under the administration.
This would create a portion of the government, so they would function under the office of inspector general.
Independent of the administration.
Independent of the executive and independent of the legislature. So it's adding a new facet to government.
Would it be like equivalent of a clerk, meaning you're outside of it, similar?
Similar to the clerk.
I mean, I support it being someone who is there as needed, as much as something. If we're going to have this position, as opposed to somebody who is full-time. For two reasons, sorry, I'm taking so much time. One of the reasons being, I don't think one person can do this job well. And so I think it would be better sort of be contracted out to an entity who has different people who specialize in different things. Unless what everyone is talking about is just creating a huge other second bureaucracy where we just hire all those people all the time to do all those things. I don't support that.
So the only point I was make is I don't think that the auditor should come from the executive branch. I don't want to take resources away from wherever the mayor is to do other legitimate audits that are routine in the city.
Well, I think my proposal shows a lot of overlap with what Stephen proposed. But I need more help understanding Stephen, how, like Rebecca said, the interaction would be formalized between the mayor and then this distinct body that they described.
I mean, I'm just saying that the director of internal audit does a lot of the functions that we're sort of contemplating already. It just, the reporting and the appointment is different. authority is. So I'm raising that as a potential source of redundancy, trying to respect the comment that Ron had, which I agree with, which is like, let's try not to just blow up that. Right.
I don't wanna get us off track of this discussion. So I'm gonna ask my question, you guys can put it, be answered at any point you guys feel it's appropriate. But I would like to hear what Alan said with the description for what it was in the federal government. Because that is narrower in scope from the, I have oversight over the entire city government. Which just necessitates like creating a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of people. It's just so broad. And what Alan had said is different than that. It's much more limited in scope and yet still seems to address some of the things that people have talked about, although not everything, because I think some people support an entire big office of the Inspector General to oversee everything that's ever been done. But we don't have to talk about that now if we want to keep going. Some of the questions that you were saying about the redundancy may be answered if it's more limited in scope of what we're asking them to do. So they're not in charge of like doing all the audits, maybe they're in charge of doing audits when there's, allegations of fraud or malfeasance. Yeah, thank you.
And what about scope's true, that one person cannot do that much?
No, so you're automatically,
You guys have- yeah,
it's just.
It's currently not an easy job to be performed.
And a financial audit is a very highly skilled technical thing that a person trained in performing a financial audit would need to do. Not generally, an inspector general doesn't do financial audits, in my experience. Can I ask a question on can we just look at that list of who the committee is again? I pulled up the Ethics Commission charter, and there's reference in the Ethics Commission charter to a city ordinance 2017-61 that seems to indicate from this document that the chief judge was unavailable to make designees or serve. And there's some change by that ordinance. And it also, in talking about the state attorney or federal prosecutors, judges, things like that, in every instance it uses the phrase former, which leads me to believe, and it would make some sense. And Bill, I don't know if you have thoughts on this. It's possible that the sitting state attorney, the sitting public defender, the sitting chief judge can't serve or designate in that capacity by the ethics of their job and what they do. So my first question is, Ken, are you familiar with that ordinance 2017-61 that is referenced in the Ethics Commission charter that on the face of the Ethics Commission charter, it seems to indicate that that charter deals with this issue of the chief judge being unable to serve in the capacity that was asked of them.
I am, it dealt with the role of that ethics commission.
Preclude them from sitting, I think we're once getting that.
It doesn't preclude them from, they can certainly decline.
That's different, right, he was asking.
That was a choice, right, a choice made in 2017 that the chief judge didn't want to participate on the ethics commission.
And the rest of the language seems to not have any sitting, for instance, state attorney, judge, etc. They're all the positions are all former. It says specifically former, which led me to believe that maybe in that context, what I'm concerned about is if we have 4 or so of our people in our charter, and that not only can they not do it, they can't designate, which this sort of indicates. Maybe we ought to look into that, and if that's the case, pick other people.
We'll just find out, Ron. You raised an issue and it's a simple ask of the office. Let's find out from the state attorney, the public defender, chief, who else did you have?
Chief judge.
Chief judge, those 3 positions, whether or not there's, I'm on the Judicial Qualification Commission. I know of no ethics rules that would preclude a judge from doing That doesn't mean I'm.
Right, these are choices that are made in other jurisdictions that. Whether or not the local ones will decide they want to participate, but you can list any individuals you like.
Well, Ron was saying, there was nothing for that precluded them, he was suggesting it's silly for us to say that's a position, I would agree with you on. If there's a judicial rule, a state attorney, I don't know that. That's what Ron was suggesting.
Yeah, or just, I mean, obviously we created an ethics commission and invited those folks to participate, and it seems that they said they not, and the language on this seems to indicate that not only did they not participate, but they did not want to appoint people to participate. And so it was all then put on the Bar Association president to make the appointments in the ethics. I don't know the history of it. I'm just looking at it on the face of this. The ethics commission.
My concern with offline, given the limited time you have, is the odds of getting a response from all those individuals regarding a possible thing the city council might do down the road are pretty tiny. If I'm any of those officials, I'm going to say, I'll wait till city council decides that this is a good idea. So what I suggest is if you're not comfortable with these individuals, we swap them out for someone else, given the limited time that you have within the scope.
I am comfortable with these individuals, I think we all are comfortable with those individuals, Ron raised the question, and I hear you.
I do not think you could get an answer at the time that you have.
You probably will.
So I'm happy to ask, but I just, if the entire decision about whether or not to move forward on this item is based on that.
I'll do you a favor,
Right.
I'll ask. I'll ask, yeah, I mean, I just see, they may not answer, I'm not suggesting I have some, magic wand, but I will ask them whether or not they're aware of any prohibition of them serving that. Again, they may not choose to, but again, I think Ron's question is not whether they will or will not choose to. The question is there some internal rule, regulation, or something that precludes them from that? I'm not aware of that either, again, but we may as well, I'll ask.
Rob, can you circulate to the group ordinance 2017-61, City of Tampa ordinance, and the Ethics Commission charter? I mean, it would be useful for everybody to look at it and make their own assessment.
Yes. So going back to what we talked about before, I want to go back to Rebecca's asked about to read what he did before. I think a lot of our decisions around who does this, it comes back to scope of the role. So if you do that, Alan, and then let's use that as a basis to think about how we not fix that problem, but address that need.
So let me, I'll read this again. Let me also add a real world example I'm talking about. So the federal system of inspector generals was created after Watergate, and the object was to root out misconduct charged with investigating fraud, waste, abuse, illegal acts inside the federal government. Direct reporting empowered to conduct independent audits and report egregious findings directly to both agency heads and to Congress. And my real example of this is, I accused of a major defense contractor of allowing defective parts to get into Black Hawk helicopters. And with that allegation comes a lot of embedded political pressure by defense contractors to Congress, by a defense department that needs these helicopters. The inspector general looked into my allegations, and I was right, by the way. But the effect of that is that it allowed the administration, defense department, to take action against the defense contractor because they didn't want to accept faulty helicopters. And it also gave cover to Congress to do whatever it needed to do, because this was not just a situation where a major employer in a particular state was being accused of something. An independent body weighed in. That independent body did not make recommendations. It just did a independent investigation that both the administration and the Congress could use. And so again, I think that comes within narrowing the scope of what we're contemplating here. We're not looking at this Inspector General to take over functions of the audit process that it currently works for the city.
So in that scenario, the Inspector General isn't the source of issues. He or she is receiving information that may lead toward investigation, depending on the process they use. Now, they screen these things in severity and a number of things, right?
Right, I mean, I don't know in the federal system whether the Inspector Generals initiate their own investigations, you know, there are whistleblower, you know, statutes and all that stuff. All I know is that they're able in an independent way to start looking into something that the public has
Interesting.
Yes.
Right. So then it goes back to this concept of employee versus contractor. And then within employee concept, the suggestion Stephen made that would kind of give that person authority over the standard audit work that some of us have said would be a problem for the mayor to remove that functionality. How do we feel about contract versus employee? First off, Doug, I think you supported concept of a contractor being paid to do this. And the reason was for purposes of scaling, not always being paid for not working on these, and resources who are experts, correct?
Yes.
Thoughts on that, I think I wants to.
How's that taken, how do they deal with that in the budget? That's not a, that's a per project, I think, what you're saying. And periodic, and they go up and they go down, and then so happens, but budgetary thing.
And who manages the contractor? Would be another question I'd ask. Who owns the contract to make sure they're delivering? And how do we do that without it being tied to the body we want to keep this function apart from? Just to answer our questions.
Yeah, I think a contract is tough for the position.
So maybe that employee, that front model concept, there's some integrity in the process, they are independent. If they don't have a contract manager per se, right, they have inherent authority to do their job, I think is the alternative. Since I feel that we're moving that direction, we're saying that would be a minimal as a full-time employee, or just based on,
Well, then who
how you wouldn't.
regulates the employee and the employee's contract?
Right, and I
know that changes to all internally, their own office, meaning like the city establishes this office, it gives a grant to the office, and then that Inspector General is running their own show. Managing the contract with the city, whoever that may be. But it's not like a paving contract or something like that.
Us?
Well, the way I envision it is, there would be no manager, that's the whole point, it's an independent, right? It's an independent position, so there is no answerable to, they are answerable to themselves. There should be nobody over them, overseeing them, completely third party.
Who reviews it again every 12 months? Who reviews it?
The committee.
Selection committee, so there is some. Answerable to someone or some people, correct?
What is the, if they're reviewing them every 12 months, let's play it out. What does the committee do with the review? In other words, they bring them in and whatever they establish, you can have a nice discussion, you can talk about what you've done, what you've not done. And then what does the committee do with that? What if they say, God,
See the word.
blah, blah, you go to squat, yeah. I guess they tell me, I said, council.
Or you gone crazy?
Are you going completely nuts? I mean, you know, there's always gonna be a check and balance, in other words, because the mayor at the end of the day, along with city council's vote, vice versa, can terminate this person. Which is, it's an okay check and balance, there's nothing wrong with that.
Which is why one of my propositions was to only have a selection committee with a term limit and then repeat for however long a term would be. Like, what are they gonna talk, you know, you go to a selection committee,
That
and they're like,
I support.
they have no power to to do anything other than say, you're out here doing. Stop.
You're saying that they can't be, you can't, I think what you're saying, Bobby, is they would be appointed for a 4-seat, whatever the term is.
Or to,
And there's no ability for the city to fire this person. And that, I'm just saying, if both the mayor and a majority of city council come together and unite and say, man. They're out of
I do
control.
support that, I support that,
Okay,
the point I was trying to make was. If this IG sits before a selection. They are just reviewers. I mean, they can't,
well, I agree with that, they can't fire.
that's just a question.
Oh, yeah, okay, we agree.
So not, no determination powers, the selection.
No.
Only the mayor and city
It's
council.
just to have someone report to them.
So right now, it sounds like we're at a point where we have an independent, full-time employee in this role. I think that's what I'm hearing. Am I correct in that?
An employee only of the office, yeah.
Of the office.
Yes.
And that's where we started actually with the questions. So I think we need to maybe do a poll on, is that the model we're talking about here? Can we do that now?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would support that model.
The modeling full-time,
Full-time employee answerable to the office.
So there's only one person in the whole office?
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
that's I think Stephen and I have very similar propositions. Where you have an existing body in the internal audit department that already has their own criteria for what they audit, they come up with a plan, they rank risk stratify
Yeah,
what they look at.
Which are not just financial audits.
And they're not.
Audit.
No, there's not, that's right.
It's more than just that.
Right.
That was the clarification I was gonna make earlier, the internal audit department really doesn't even look at finances, they just look at internal controls. Are you doing what your policy guidelines say you should do? The city hires an external auditor to look at the books once a year, so that's a completely separate thing.
The internal auditor right now is required to report anything to city council on a regular basis. It's all fair.
So Stephen and I's overlap, I think in our conceptualization of this is like you have this group already doing a job. Let's arm it with a little bit more, a little bit more investigative authority. And make it, I mean, I think this is where we diverge, under my proposal, that whole section, that whole group, that whole division would be completely independent. That you're pumped about, and I think there's something disgusting.
This is gonna get so complicated.
But I think it's a different,
That big fat no.
Doesn't that bring it?
Right.
So that the cost issue that Rebecca was describing, I mean, it's a whole.
we already have it, that's just the point, we already have a
Remove the audit
fund.
function under
But if
the.
you move it, don't you have to replace it, it's not appointing mayor.
Just recycle, just redefine what their role is, that's my vote,
But to appoint the mayor,
We make this too complicated. I'm listening to all of you and everything's moving all over the place. There's really no agreement on it. It's all over the place. And it's gonna get to a point where I think, I suspect, maybe I'll speak for just myself, I'm gonna be a big fat no. Because it's gotten way too complicated.
On the entire
concept.
Yeah.
I know where I'll end up, it's just default, instead of, I don't have a clear understanding. How they're appointed, what their job responsibility is, and how this is gonna fit within the budget. And how it's actually gonna be workable, right? Because if you put just Joe Smith in this position. Joe Smith is gonna be a one-armed paper hanger trying to pay for the whole city of Tampa, okay, and it's just not gonna work. So we need to come up with something that either works, or just recognize that if we're, I feel like in trouble right now, we're all running.
What would you suggest?
God, what.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion, why don't we go, I mean, we don't.
You could do it independent, but what I would suggest here, let me quickly say, I mean, if I was trying to build consensus, this isn't my guess, but if I was trying to build a consensus here. It would be to go with, right, I don't, you guys are confusing the hell out of me. I can't follow this. I would establish the IG office and it would be an office, there would be
So they could get either they build a team or they build a contract.
They would build or contract a team, and you got your budgetary issues, I get all that, but I would have them build their team. You hire an IG, that person appointed, that person's job, I'm gonna hire my team. How many people do I need on my team? God, I don't know that yet. But I would have that, I wouldn't start moving departments around, you're gonna start sounds like you're gonna offend the hell out of the mayor along the way in doing that. It just seems to me we're making it much more complicated than it needs to be. If we're gonna land this, Bobby, it needs to be simple, easy. It's gotta go from here. We've gotta agree on something. It's gotta go to city council. They gotta understand what the hell we're even suggesting, right? Everyone's gotta get on board right now. We're just.
And to add to that very quickly, the IG could come back with a 9-12 month review and say, hey, I really need to hire an extra person, right? They can approve that, go to city council and get the budget for it and expand the office time.
So if we're trying to get the yes and we're at risk of smashing our sandcastle, then.
We are close.
Yeah,
So,
that's an integration.
to get to yes,
Yes.
I would agree with you and say, all right, let's. It's there, we're here, yeah, so we've arrived back almost where we began, so we all agree, or there's had been majority vote that we want this position. So Bill, I'll concede my my elegant formula and say that, okay, to make the simple position, start there. Forget about the internal audit stuff.
So, because it evolves,
Even though I love money,
Just like the language that we were discussing with
we compromised on that, yeah.
we compromised that is it everything that we wanted? No, but it's a start and it's a better than that what we have now.
And you know that broad, and what I would back up on that, you know, that language about all city issues and all of that, I would look at that and truncate that a little bit. That's the establishment.
So let's do one at a time, just to know,
Yeah.
so let's do one at a time, just to get Ken what he needs to define what he's provided. Show our opinions, just to we have a creative position. Not fold out, fold the other departments, that it's independent, that's an employee, correct?
Yes.
So that's what we're asking for, call for all in favor in the room here,
to get the yes,
okay, Paul, then Rebecca, and then. Ron in favor or against?
I'm against.
Again, Kathleen, are you there, please? But once, go twice.
It's the bridge.
Okay, well, it got to majority, so I'll put that down. 1. 2.
Yeah, 6 yes votes.
Can I just make one suggestion for people to think about too? One of the things that is most troubling to me is the subpoena power. So I know we're coming up on time here today, but I would ask my colleagues on the commission to give some considerable thought to that. I think it's very dangerous. The way it's
For the
drafted.
record, I'm against it.
and could you comment if subpoena power is pretty standard in this position in other municipalities and counties?
It is.
So what that means, Bobby, is this person can issue a subpoena to you personally to get your personal records. They can issue a subpoena to look through your phone. They can issue a subpoena to get documents from your house. I mean, I think, at least I'll speak for myself, I feel like we've got recent instances, fortunately not at the city, but where this kind of authority by government on citizens is dangerous, and serious concerns about it.
Were you gonna say something about that, Bill?
Well,
About
I mean,
the concept around language.
The city council has subpoena power, and they're giving the IG subpoena power. And Ron, all I was gonna say, and Rebecca had a point, is from where does that come? I guess it was from just the charter. Who would enforce the subpoenas? I mean, it is something to be discussed. And by the way, if any of us get served with a subpoena for your personal information, stuff in your house, you do not have to automatically turn that over. Okay, you can always object to additional subpoena. That is not a fait accompli in any world.
I'm calling budget.
Bill, what basis would you object on it? If it was, let's use it for instance where it was related to your participation on this commission, what basis would you object to it?
On what? On base, my phone? They're not
Yeah.
getting my phone, there's no relevancy there. You wanna do, even how it works, you wanna do an ESI search, you can pay to do that. I will download anything on my cell phone that has anything to do with the Charter Review Commission, but like hell, I have to give it, no judge in the world would ever force me to give over my phone to anyone. But we can debate that.
Let's debate that all the time. Go ahead.
If I could just read again from the federal system, when it comes to subpoenas, documents and records, inspectors general can issue administrative subpoenas to compel non-federal entities, contractors, and individuals to release physical or electronic information, documents, and data. They cannot use subpoenas to get documents from other federal agencies. They must use other methods. In terms of witness testimony, most federal IGs cannot legally force outside witnesses, contractors, or former federal employees to sit for an interview or give sworn testimony.
Okay, maybe at this point, since we have about 3.5 minutes, we just itemize the things yet to discuss in more detail. So one is this, so. And then the other was something, Billy, you mentioned, which was revisiting what maybe, certainly Rebecca took to be too broadly worded powers in the language. So I just want to capture that concept. Are there any other items specifically this group needs to discuss to arrive at a full approved list for Ken to do it? So one was revisit broad powers language, being high level, but Ken can say to advise me. Rebecca?
The broad powers and then the further regulation by ordinance, which I totally understand how a charter works. I understand that they can't enact any ordinance. It's not that it's in conflict with the charter, but this expressly in line with the charter allows city council to talk about their powers, their reporting obligations, their relationships, their functions.
Eliminate all of that.
That's super broad and allows them to create something that is nothing close to anything that anyone here envisioned. They can completely
Rewrite it.
rewrite
We don't like that.
Okay. Any other big items in this?
If I may,
I don't have a suggestion for you, Ken.
does the majority of the group agree with that?
That's a good question.
You stand.
Yeah, so
My concern is the section G, which allows city council to further regulation by ordinance. Allows them to do some things that make sense, appointment, reappointment, term, functions, authority, powers, reporting obligations, and relationships to other oversight bodies shall be further established by ordinance. And it doesn't at all limit what else can be put in these further regulation by ordinance, thereby allowing the city council to create something that is not in line with anything that anyone here envisioned. Whether we're in agreement at all, it could be something completely different than anybody envisioned.
They can change this ordinance.
They can't change it outside of what the charter says, but the charter language specifically gives a very broad range of how to set it up.
As I'm interpreting the request, it is to narrow this provision to the bare minimum as to what needs to be done by ordinance.
I don't know if there's consensus to that.
So just raise your hand if you agree with that. Let's do this, yes or no? I mean, it's easy.
you remove it entirely.
So
We need it.
A way to modify like.
I don't know if you're that long, agreeing to narrow.
You gotta have those without raising their hand.
Powers which is by ordinance. So the reality is, those not another signal from Ken, so I think we've got enough of it off you to get that direction. So I'll write that.
Yeah, but what I'm hearing from all of you is to take the edits you've, or at least there's been a majority of them, and redraft based on that.
Yes.
And send that out to everyone, and then we need another meeting. So
We're gonna meeting and come to gotta have a meeting.
we gotta have to.
Actually, that should be the last, we can take our right there.
If we have to have a meeting, it should, I'm hoping it's the 11th. 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It has to be, yeah, it has to be.
It has to be. Yeah, I'll be here for that.
As a quick, just so Rebecca, for example, appointment's already kind of covered in its current language, like you would say, like, we don't need that in ordinance, we already have it in here, so would that be a fair example of what you mean by narrowing it?
Yes, another good example is powers. I'll just put that one in front of the mic.
Like a future council could do whatever they want.
As long as it's not in conflict with any of the other sections, they can define the powers.
Okay,
And that makes a lot of sense, if you are, say, if you say you are the county commission and you're setting up your internal auditor. And you are, and it's yours. And you're setting up the powers because it's yours, that's how the county works, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think it works here when you're trying to create something that's completely independent and to allow them to structure who they report to. Their relationship to other city oversight body. It's no longer,
Yeah. Section, right?
well, then I don't.
I think we're gonna trust Ken to interpret this with some very specific guidelines.
I think I got it. So, but
Yes, we do have to meet again,
Legal jargon.
Sorry.
so it's hoping to skirt that one. I'm not a conference.
Should we do this, get AI?
Yeah,
I just want a lot of you keep going. Honestly.
everyone needs to look at your.
Okay, I move to adjourn the meeting at 8:58 PM.
Second.
The vote, okay, all here, aye. Both in nay. Right, okay.
What are you doing in Africa? You're going on safari.
Very well, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Rob, if you could still hear me, I know we're not in session anymore. Where did we land on when the next meeting is gonna be?
Sorry, one sec. If you have the first meeting, we're meeting in person next week, Rob. We'll take care of it.
Here, I'm sorry, I'm sitting next to you. What did you go?
Stay.
Your grandfather, my father. Same age as you. That's 93. You don't think you should.
But I'm still not back down. Running out of this. Alright, I see these.
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening?
My colleagues have been friends for 60 years.
there's a note in the Congress.
No.
To the city.
You guys don't change.
I'm just an honest citizen.